Standing in front of 88 guests at my sister Madison's engagement party, I felt Dad's hand crack across my face. The champagne glass shattered on marble. Madison's applause echoed through the ballroom as she screamed about me being barren, demanding our family home. Mom's laughter mixed with her cruel words about my worthlessness. Blood trickled from my lip while everyone watched. 23 years of being the responsible daughter meant nothing, but they forgot something important. I knew exactly who held their secrets. The Grandmont Estate's crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the marble floor where my champagne glass lay in pieces. My cheek burned with the heat of humiliation and my father's handprint, but the pain went deeper than skin. It reached back through 23 years of trying to be the daughter they wanted. The sister Madison needed the family member who held everything together when it threatened to fall apart. Growing up in Riverside, Connecticut, our colonial home looked like something from a magazine. White picket fence manicured lawn rose bushes that Mom tended religiously for the neighbors to admire. Behind those pristine walls, though, lived a different story. I was 11 when I first understood my role in the family. Madison was 6, all golden curls and dimples, throwing a tantrum because her birthday cake wasn't the right shade of pink. While Mom cooed and promised her a new one, Dad pulled me aside. "Elisabeth," he said, his voice carrying that weight I'd come to know too well. "You're the older one, the responsible one. Your sister needs understanding. She's delicate." Delicate. That word followed Madison through elementary school when she couldn't keep friends because she always had to be the center of attention. Through middle school when she shoplifted makeup and Mom covered it up paying off store managers. Through high school when she wrecked 3 cars and somehow it was never her fault. Meanwhile, I maintained straight A's, worked part-time at the local bookstore, and saved every penny for college. The irony wasn't lost on me as I stood there, blood now dripping onto the Italian marble, the responsible daughter, the one who'd answered every middle-of-the-night phone call, who'd emptied her savings account more times than she could count, who'd given up so much for a family that saw her as nothing more than a resource to be drained. 3 years had passed since Derek's flag-draped coffin arrived at Dover Air Force Base. 3 years since the military chaplain stood at my door with words that shattered my world. Training accident, they called it, as if that somehow made losing my husband at 31 easier to bear. The stress and grief had taken its toll on my body in ways the doctors said might be permanent. Secondary infertility due to severe emotional trauma. The specialist had explained, her voice gentle but clinical. Your body has essentially shut down its reproductive system as a protective measure. Madison, of course, had turned even my tragedy into her opportunity. She'd shown up at Derek's funeral wearing a dress more suited for a cocktail party, spent the reception talking about how hard it was for her to see me so sad, and left early for a spa appointment. Mom had patted my hand and whispered, "Well, at least Madison will give us grandchildren someday." The responsible daughter. Even when Dad's heart surgery threatened to bankrupt them 2 years ago, who did they call not Madison, who was finding herself in Europe on their credit cards? They called me at 2 in the morning, Mom sobbing about medical bills and mortgage payments. I'd liquidated my retirement savings without hesitation. $60,000 gone in a wire transfer, and Dad never even said thank you. He was too proud, Mom explained. It was hard for him to accept help from his daughter. 6 months later, when Mom wrapped her Lexus around a telephone pole driving home from her wine club, guess who handled the insurance? The legal fees, the medical bills. Madison was too stressed from her new relationship to help. She needed to focus on her happiness, Mom said. After all, she'd had such a hard time finding the right man. The right man. Bradley Wellington III, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune, tall and distinguished, with perfectly styled hair and a Harvard MBA. Madison had met him at a charity gala she'd crashed, spinning a story about being a philanthropist herself. Somehow, she'd maintained the charade for 8 months. Bradley believed she ran a nonprofit for underprivileged children, that she came from old money, that her family was connected to European nobility. The lies flowed from her lips like honey, and he swallowed every drop. I touched my split lip, tasting copper and betrayal. Around me, the party guests had grown silent, their champagne flutes frozen midway to their lips. Designer gowns rustled as people shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to intervene or pretend they hadn't seen Riverside's most respected family implode in real time. My reflection caught in the ballroom's gilded mirror. Elizabeth Grace Mitchell, 34 years old, wearing the modest navy dress Mom had insisted was appropriate for someone in your situation. My dark hair was pulled back in the simple style that didn't draw attention from the bride-to-be. Everything about me had been carefully orchestrated to fade into the background of Madison's spotlight. But they'd made a critical error tonight. They'd pushed too far, assumed too much. They thought the responsible daughter would always be there to clean up their messes, to foot their bills, to sacrifice her own life for their comfort. They forgot that even the most patient person has limits. They forgot that while I'd been quietly managing their disasters for years, I'd also been watching, learning, documenting. The twist of tonight wasn't just that I'd reached my breaking point. It was what I discovered 3 days ago while organizing my financial documents. Derek's military life insurance, the one I'd been too grief-stricken to touch, too overwhelmed to even think about. $1.5 million, sitting in an untouched account accumulating interest for 3 years. Money I'd never mentioned to my family because I knew exactly what would happen if I did. Madison's shrill voice cut through my thoughts. Look at her standing there bleeding like some martyr. This is supposed to be my night and she's ruining it with her dramatics. She turned to the crowd, her sequin dress catching the light. You all saw it. She provoked him. She always does. This always has to make everything about her grief, her problems, her inability to give our parents the grandchildren they deserve. Mom stepped forward, her perfectly manicured hand reaching for Dad's arm in a show of solidarity. Elisabeth, really? Making such a scene at your sister's engagement party? Haven't we suffered enough with your situation? The least you could do is sign over the house. You rattle around in there all alone while Madison and Bradley will need space for a real family. A real family. The words echoed in the vast ballroom, bouncing off crystal and marble and the cold hearts of the people who'd raised me. Somewhere in the crowd, a phone camera captured every moment. Good, I thought. Let them record this. Let them document the exact moment the responsible daughter decided she'd been responsible enough. Because what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly fathom in their narcissistic bubble, was that I'd already begun to take control. The quiet call I'd make in just a few minutes wouldn't be a plea for help or a desperate attempt at salvage. It would be the first domino in a carefully planned sequence that would reveal exactly who the Mitchell family really was. And more importantly, who I had become without them. 2 weeks before the slap that would change everything, I sat at my kitchen table staring at an envelope that practically dripped with Madison's theatrical flair. Rose gold foil, hand-calligraphed addressing, and a wax seal bearing a coat of arms that definitely didn't belong to our family. I almost laughed at the pretentiousness of it all. The Mitchells of Riverside, Connecticut were descended from a long line of middle managers and real estate agents, not European nobility. Inside the invitation itself was a marvel of excess, cream-colored cardstock so thick it could probably stop a bullet, more gold foil and ribbons that served no purpose except to scream, expensive. The engagement party would be held at the Grandmont Estate, Connecticut's most exclusive venue where presidents had dined and Hollywood royalty had married. A handwritten note was tucked behind the invitation, Madison's loopy script filling the page. Dearest Elisabeth, it began, and I could practically hear the fake sweetness dripping from each word. I know things have been difficult for you since Derek's passing, and I want you to know that Bradley and I are here for you. Family supports family after all. I'm sure you'll want to contribute to making this celebration perfect. After all, you've always been so good with money and details. Perhaps handling the venue costs would help you feel included. It would mean so much to know you're part of making my dreams come true. Your loving sister, Madison. Contribute. Feel included. The manipulation was so transparent it was almost insulting. Translation: pay for everything while we take credit. I set the invitation aside and poured myself another cup of coffee. Derek's favorite mug warming my hands. He would have seen right through this. Your sister, he used to say, could sell ice to Eskimos and then convince them they owed her for the privilege. 3 days later, Madison appeared at my door unannounced as always. She swept in wearing a fur-trimmed coat that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage, her engagement ring catching the light with every gesture. The diamond was massive, ostentatious, the kind of ring that screamed new money, trying to look like old money. Deus, Lizzie. She threw her arms around me, enveloping me in a cloud of designer perfume. I'd always hated that nickname, and she knew it. Did you get my invitation? Isn't it gorgeous? Bradley had them designed by the same woman who did the Vanderbilt wedding last year. I extracted myself from her embrace and led her to the living room where she perched on the edge of my sofa as if afraid middle-class furniture might be contagious. I got it. Congratulations on your engagement. Oh, Lizzie, it's like a fairy tale. Bradley is everything I've ever dreamed of. Handsome, successful, from such a good family. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. His mother is a federal judge. His father owns half of Greenwich. Can you imagine the life we'll have? I could imagine it. Madison playing dress-up in a world she'd lied her way into, Bradley eventually discovering the truth, the inevitable spectacular collapse. But I kept my thoughts to myself, nodding at appropriate intervals while she babbled about wedding plans and honeymoon destinations. About the engagement party, she finally said, getting to her real purpose. I know my note mentioned the venue costs. It's $25,000 for the evening, which includes catering and basic bar service. But you know me, I can't do basic anything. She laughed, the sound like breaking glass. I've upgraded everything. Premium menu, top shelf, open bar, live orchestra, floral installations by Eduardo Ramirez. He did the Met Gala last year. And the total is... She waved her hand dismissively, diamond flashing. Oh, probably around 40,000, maybe 45. But here's the thing, Lizzie. Bradley thinks I'm handling it with my non-profit funds. You know, the children's charity I run. The children's charity that didn't exist. I kept my face neutral. So I need you to pay the venue directly. I've already told them my assistant, that's you, will handle all the paperwork. They have your name and everything. She smiled, bright and false as costume jewelry. You'll do this for me, won't you? For family. For family, the phrase that had trapped me for 34 years. Madison, $45,000 is... Oh, I know it's a lot, but think about it this way. You have all that space in this house, no children to put through college, no husband to support. What else are you going to spend it on? And really, after everything Mom and Dad have done for you, don't you think it's time to give back everything they'd done for me? Like criticizing my choices, belittling my marriage, treating my home as their personal ATM. I thought about the $60,000 for Dad's surgery, the $30,000 for Mom's legal troubles, the countless smaller amounts over the years. Conservative estimate, I'd given them over $200,000 in the past decade. I'll think about it, I said. Oh, Lizzie, she squealed and hugged me again. I knew I could count on you. You've always been so reliable. Not exciting or special, maybe, but reliable. That counts for something, right? Not exciting or special, just reliable. Like a washing machine or a savings bond. Something useful, but ultimately forgettable. After she left in a whirlwind of air kisses and promises to text me the venue details, I sat in my quiet house and made a decision. I would pay for her party. I would be the reliable older sister one more time. But I would also start preparing for what I suspected was coming. The next morning, I drove to the Grandmont estate. The venue coordinator, a polished woman named Grace Chen, greeted me with professional warmth that cooled noticeably when she realized I wasn't the bride-to-be. "Ms. Mitchell, how lovely to meet you. Your sister speaks so highly of you." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "She mentioned you'd be handling the financial arrangements." We sat in her office surrounded by photos of lavish events and celebrity weddings. She pulled out a folder thick with contracts and began walking me through the details. Everything seemed standard until she flipped to a page near the back. "Now, this is just a formality, but since you're signing as the responsible party, you'll need to initial here, here, and here. This simply states that you're personally liable for all costs associated with the event, including any additions or changes made by the bride's party." I paused, pen hovering over the paper. "Additions or changes?" "Oh, yes. Ms. Madison has already called several times with upgrades. The ice sculpture, the additional lighting package, the vintage champagne service. She assured us you'd approved everything." My stomach dropped. "What's the current total?" Grace consulted her computer. "With all current selections, we're at $68,400. But don't worry, that's actually quite reasonable for a Grandmont event. The Pemberton wedding last month was over 200,000. 68,000. Already 23,000 over what Madison had told me. I could refuse walk away, let her deal with her own mess. But then I thought about the scene that would follow. The tears, the accusations, the family meetings where I'd be painted as the selfish sister who ruined Madison's happiness out of jealousy. "I'll need copies of everything," I said, signing where indicated. "All contracts, all change orders, everything." "Of course, I'll have our office manager prepare a complete file for you." That evening, I sat with those contracts spread across my dining room table. Madison's signature appeared nowhere. Every financial obligation bore my name alone. She'd set me up perfectly. If anything went wrong, if payment was disputed, I was solely liable. I reached for my laptop and began typing an email to Sarah Montgomery, my best friend since college, and now a successful attorney. "I think I need your professional opinion on something," I wrote. Then I scanned and attached every document. Sarah called within an hour. "Elisabeth, these contracts are ironclad. You're on the hook for everything. But more concerning is this clause here about unauthorized changes. Madison could theoretically add another 50,000 in costs without your approval, and you'd still be liable." "I know." "Then why did you sign?" I looked at Derek's photo on the mantle, his brave smile forever frozen in time. "Because sometimes you have to let people show you exactly who they are. And when they do, you need proof." "Elisabeth, what are you planning?" "I'm not sure yet, but I'm tired of being the family ATM. I'm tired of being reliable but not special. And I'm very, very tired of pretending this is normal." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Want me to come to the party?" "Would you... Are you kidding? Madison's engagement party where you're footing a $70,000 bill? I wouldn't miss it. Besides, someone should be there who actually cares about you." After we hung up, I opened my laptop again and navigated to a folder I'd created years ago but never had the courage to use. Financial records, text messages, emails, photos, evidence of every manipulation, every lie, every time they'd used my love for them as a weapon against me. The responsible daughter had been keeping receipts. As I closed the laptop, my phone buzzed. A text from Madison. "Forgot to mention I added a few teensy things to the party. Nothing major. You're the best sister ever." I didn't respond. Instead, I walked to Derek's home office, now my sanctuary, and opened the safe where I kept our important documents. There, between our marriage certificate and his Bronze Star citation, lay an envelope I'd been afraid to open for 3 years. The final insurance settlement, $1.5 million that Derek had insisted on even though the premiums were steep for a military pilot. "If anything happens to me," he'd said, "I want to know you're taken care of. Really taken care of, not just getting by." I pulled out the documents and read through them carefully. The money sat in an investment account wisely managed by Derek's financial advisor, now worth closer to $1.7 million with interest and market gains. My family knew nothing about it. I'd been too grief-stricken to mention it at first then, too wary as their requests for money intensified. Looking back at Madison's text, I almost smiled. She wanted to add a few things to the party, fine. Let her add whatever she wanted. Let her turn her engagement celebration into the most elaborate production Riverside had ever seen. Because what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this would be the last time they'd treat me as their personal bank. The responsible daughter was about to become something else entirely. The Grandmont estate sparkled like something from a dream as twilight settled over Connecticut. I arrived 2 hours early, partly to ensure everything was properly arranged, and partly to steel myself for what I suspected was coming. Grace Chen met me at the entrance, her expression carefully professional with an undercurrent of sympathy that told me she'd seen this dynamic before. "Ms. Mitchell, everything is prepared to Ms. Madison's specifications. The final additions brought the total to $89,600. She handed me a folder. The premium vodka luge was an interesting choice. $89,000. Madison had added another $21,000 in the 3 days since I'd signed the contracts. I accepted the folder with steady hands, though inside I felt the familiar churning of anxiety mixed with something newer, harder, resolve. "Thank you, Grace. The venue looks spectacular." And it did. Madison had demanded perfection, and she'd gotten it. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables dressed in ivory silk. Thousands of white roses and peonies created a floral wonderland. The string quartet was already warming up in the corner, their instruments gleaming. Ice sculptures of swans flanked the entrance to the ballroom. Everything screamed wealth and sophistication, a far cry from the middle-class reality of the Mitchell family. I chose a quiet corner where I could observe the arriving guests. They came in waves of designer gowns and custom tuxedos, Riverside's elite mixed with Bradley's Greenwich crowd. I recognized several federal judges, a congressman, and at least 2 Fortune 500 CEOs. Madison had certainly aimed high with her guest list. Sarah arrived fashionably late, looking stunning in an emerald dress that complemented her auburn hair. She air-kissed acquaintances as she made her way to me, but I caught the sharp assessment in her eyes as she took in the scene. "This is quite the production," she murmured, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. "Your sister doesn't do anything halfway, does she?" "Not when someone else is paying." Sarah's phone was already in her hand, though she held it casually like she was checking messages. I'd learned over our 15-year friendship never to underestimate her. Sarah Montgomery might look like a socialite, but she was one of Connecticut's sharpest legal minds with a particular talent for documentation that bordered on prescient. The family arrived together, a united front of Mitchell perfection. Dad in his best suit, the one I'd bought him for a cousin's wedding 5 years ago. Mom draped in jewelry that looked expensive, but that I knew came from the home shopping network. And Madison resplendent in a beaded gown that probably cost more than most people's cars, Bradley at her side, looking every inch the pharmaceutical prince. Madison spotted me immediately and glided over her smile bright and false. "Lizzie, doesn't everything look absolutely perfect? Bradley's mother is already so impressed. She said it rivals the governor's inaugural ball." "It's beautiful, Madison." "Oh, that dress." Her eyes swept over my navy outfit with practiced dismissal. "Well, I suppose it's appropriate. We can't all shine, can we? Someone has to fade into the background." Bradley, to his credit, looked uncomfortable. "Madison, that's not very—" "Oh, honey, Lizzie doesn't mind. She knows her place in the family." Madison patted his arm. "She's always been the practical one. Speaking of which, Lizzie, I should mention that Daddy has something important to discuss with you later about the house situation. The house situation. My house. The one Derek bought. The one I'd lived in alone for 3 years. But I simply nodded, playing my part one last time. The party flowed around me in currents of small talk and champagne bubbles. I stayed on the periphery, watching Madison work the room like a professional. She'd perfected the art of appearing to belong in this world, dropping names of schools she'd never attended and mentioning charitable work she'd never done. Bradley gazed at her adoringly, completely taken in by the performance. Dinner was served precisely at 8, a 7-course meal that Madison insisted rivaled anything from Manhattan's finest restaurants. I was seated at a table with distant relatives and Madison's college acquaintances carefully placed where I'd be visible, but not prominent. The message was clear: you're here because you paid for it, but don't forget your position. It was during the 3rd course that Dad stood up, tapping his champagne flute for attention. The room quieted, all eyes turning to the father of the bride-to-be. Dad had always been a compelling speaker when he wanted to be, and tonight he was in fine form. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us in celebrating Madison and Bradley's engagement. His voice carried easily through the ballroom. As a father, there's no greater joy than seeing your daughter find happiness with someone who truly deserves her. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Mom beamed. Madison preened. Madison has always been special, Dad continued. From the moment she was born, she lit up our lives. Beautiful, talented, destined for greatness. She's brought nothing but joy and pride to our family. I noticed he didn't mention me. Not once. Not even in passing. I was invisible, the ghost who'd paid for the feast, but wasn't worthy of acknowledgement. To Madison and Bradley, Dad raised his glass. May your future be as bright as the love you share tonight. The toast was echoed by 88 voices. I raised my glass too, the champagne bitter on my tongue. As conversations resumed, Madison stood clinking her own glass for attention. Thank you all so much for being here. Her voice was honey-sweet, perfectly pitched to carry just the right notes of humility and excitement. Bradley and I are so blessed to have such wonderful people in our lives. I especially want to thank my family for their endless support. She paused dramatically, her eyes finding mine across the room. And I suppose I should thank my sister Elisabeth for handling some of the practical details of tonight. She's always been so good with logistics. It's wonderful when family members know their strengths, isn't it? Elisabeth might not have the blessing of children or a husband anymore, but at least she can contribute in other ways. The words landed like individual slaps. Might not have the blessing of children anymore. Contribute in other ways. The cruelty was breathtaking in its casual delivery, wrapped in a shell of false gratitude. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. A few exchanged glances, but no one spoke up. After all, Madison continued, her smile never wavering, what else would she do with her time and money? It's not like she has a real family to spend it on. Mom's laughter tinkled through the silence that followed. Oh, Madison, you're terrible. But her tone was indulgent, approving. Though you do have a point. Elisabeth, dear, you really should think about what you're doing with that big house. All those empty bedrooms just gathering dust. Madison and Bradley will need proper space for when the grandchildren come. The grandchildren. Always the grandchildren I couldn't provide. The family I'd failed to maintain after Derek's death. My inadequacy as a woman reduced to real estate calculations. I set down my champagne glass carefully, the crystal ringing against the table. Several heads turned my way. Sarah's hand moved slightly, her phone capturing everything from her position 2 tables away. Good. Let her record this. Let there be evidence of what the Mitchell family really thought of their eldest daughter. You're absolutely right, Madison, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the room. I should definitely think about the house. Something in my tone must have warned her, because Madison's smile flickered for just a moment, but she recovered quickly, turning back to her audience. Well, that's settled then. Now let's all enjoy this beautiful evening. After all, you only get engaged once. She giggled. Well, in my case, anyway. Not everyone can say that. Can they, Lizzie? The reference to my widowhood was so cruel, so unnecessarily vicious, that even some of Madison's friends looked shocked. But she was already moving on, pulling Bradley into an orchestrated kiss as photographers she'd hired captured the moment. I stood quietly and made my way toward the ladies' room. I needed a moment to compose myself, to prepare for what I knew was coming. Dad had something to discuss about the house. Madison had made sure everyone knew I was a barren, worthless burden. Mom had publicly endorsed giving away my home. The stage was set. They'd shown everyone exactly who they were, stripped of pretense or subtlety. Now it was time for the responsible daughter to make her exit permanently. I never made it to the ladies' room. Dad intercepted me near the corridor, his face flushed with champagne and anticipated victory. Behind him, I could see Mom hovering, clutching her purse like a weapon. The orchestra played something classical and elegant, while my family prepared to ambush me in full view of Connecticut's social elite. Elisabeth, we need to talk. Dad's voice carried that tone I'd heard 1,000 times before, the one that said he'd made a decision and expected immediate compliance. About your living situation. My living situation? I kept my voice level, though my hands trembled slightly. You mean my home? That house is too big for one person. You're being selfish, rattling around in there while your sister is starting a real family. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. I took the liberty of having papers drawn up. Transfer of deed. All you need to do is sign. The audacity was breathtaking. He'd actually brought legal documents to his daughter's engagement party, planning to strong-arm me into giving away my home, between the salad course and dessert. Around us, guests pretended not to notice the family drama unfolding, though I caught several surreptitious glances and at least 3 phones discreetly recording. That house belonged to Derek, I said quietly. He bought it for us, for our future. Derek's dead, Mom interjected, her voice sharp. 3 years, Elisabeth. It's time to stop living in the past and think about the living. Madison needs that house. She deserves happiness. And I don't... You had your chance. Mom's voice rose, drawing more attention. You had a husband. You had opportunities, and what happened? You couldn't even give us grandchildren. Madison can. Madison will. The least you can do is step aside gracefully. Madison appeared as if summoned, Bradley trailing behind, looking increasingly uncomfortable. She'd clearly been watching, waiting for her cue to enter stage left and deliver her lines in this carefully orchestrated performance. Oh, are we discussing the house? She clasped her hands together in false delight. Bradley, honey, I told you Elisabeth would understand. She's always been so reasonable about family needs. Madison. Bradley began, perhaps this isn't the right time. Of course it's the right time. Madison cut him off. Everyone important is here to witness Elisabeth doing the right thing for once. Isn't that right, Lizzie? You'll sign the papers like a good sister. I looked at the document in Dad's hand, then at the faces of my family. 3 people who'd taken everything I'd ever offered and demanded more. 3 people who saw my grief as an inconvenience, my love as weakness, my generosity as obligation. No. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Dad's face darkened. Mom gasped. Madison's perfectly painted lips formed a small O of shock. What did you say? Dad stepped closer, using his height advantage to loom over me. I said no. I'm not signing anything. That's my home. Derek's and mine. You have no right to it. No right, his voice rose to match Mom's. After everything we've done for you, after raising you, supporting you, being there for you. Being there for me? I laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. When Derek died and you complained about the funeral disrupting your golf schedule, when I paid for your heart surgery and you couldn't even say thank you, when Mom wrecked her car driving drunk and I covered it up to save your reputation. You ungrateful... Dad raised his hand, and for a moment time seemed to slow. I could have stepped back, could have defused the situation like I'd done 100 times before. The responsible daughter would have apologized, made excuses, found a way to smooth things over. But I wasn't that person anymore. I stood my ground, chin raised, the eyes steady on his. The slap connected with enough force to turn my head. The crack echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. The orchestra stopped mid-note. Conversations died instantly. 88 guests turned to stare at the Mitchell family patriarch who just struck his daughter at a formal event. My cheek burned, and I tasted blood where my teeth had cut the inside of my mouth, but I didn't cry, didn't cower. I turned back to face him, and that's when Madison started clapping. The slow, mocking applause filled the silent ballroom. Finally, she laughed, the sound high and cruel. Finally, someone put her in her place. Do you see now, Elisabeth? Do you understand what you are? Nothing. You're nothing but a barren waste of space cluttering up a house meant for a real family. She turned to the crowd, arms spread wide like a demented circus ringmaster. Give us the house, you pathetic cow. You've got no husband, no children, no future. What could you possibly need with 4 bedrooms and a backyard meant for swing sets and birthday parties? Miss Madison. Bradley grabbed her arm, his face pale with shock. What are you doing? She shook him off, advancing on me with the confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences. I'm saying what everyone's thinking. Look at her. 34 years old, widowed barren, bleeding at her sister's engagement party because she's too selfish to do the right thing. Mom's laughter joined Madison's, a tinkling sound like breaking china. She's right, you know. You're just a barren waste, Elisabeth. All that money we spent raising you, educating you, and for what? So you could hoard resources meant for the next generation. The champagne glass in my hand shattered. I hadn't realized I was gripping it until the crystal gave way, adding to the blood, already dripping onto the pristine marble floor. The pain was distant secondary to the roaring in my ears. I looked around the ballroom, taking in the shocked faces of judges and executives, social mavens, and political power brokers. Some looked horrified, others seemed darkly fascinated, a few were openly recording. But in that sea of faces, I found one that mattered. Judge Helen Whitmore Bradley's mother, staring at the scene with an expression of absolute disgust. You want to know why I won't give you my house? My voice carried clearly through the silent room. Because Derek bought it with his combat pay. Because he chose every room thinking about our future. Because it's the last piece of him I have left, and I'll burn it to the ground before I let you desecrate his memory with your greed. Oh, greed, Madison shrieked. You're calling us greedy. You're the one sitting on resources you don't need. You're the one who can't let go of the past. You're the one... Who paid for this party? I interrupted, my voice steady despite the blood dripping from my hand and lip. $89,000 for your engagement celebration. $60,000 for Dad's heart surgery. $30,000 for Mom's legal fees. $20,000 for your rehab, Madison. Oh, did Bradley know about that? The 3 trips to Serenity Acres for your little problem. Madison's face drained of color. You promised... I promised to help family. I pulled out my phone with my uninjured hand. But you just made it very clear that I'm not family. I'm just a barren waste, remember, a convenient ATM, a problem to be solved. Elisabeth. Dad stepped forward, perhaps realizing they'd overplayed their hand. Let's discuss this privately. No, I pressed a single contact on my phone. We're done discussing things privately. We're done with family meetings where you berate me into submission. We're done with me being the responsible daughter who enables your dysfunction. The phone rang once before a familiar voice answered. Sarah, yes, I'd like to make that call now. The quiet one we discussed. Sarah's voice was professionally calm through the speaker. Understood. I'll handle everything immediately. I ended the call and looked at my family one last time. Dad with his hand still raised as if frozen in the moment of violence. Mom clutching her fake pearls with genuine panic. Madison's beautiful face twisted with rage and fear. "What call?" Madison demanded. "What did you just do?" I smiled, tasting copper and freedom. "I just set the dominoes falling. You should probably enjoy the rest of your party, Madison. It's the last thing of yours I'll ever pay for." As I turned to leave, I caught sight of Bradley's mother making her own phone call, her eyes never leaving Madison. The congressman was speaking quietly to his aide. The federal judges were conferring in low voices. The slap heard round the room had done more than split my lip. It had shattered the Mitchell family's carefully constructed facade, revealing the rot beneath for all of Riverside society to see. And this was only the beginning. The ladies' room at the Grandmont estate was a sanctuary of marble and gold fixtures, empty except for me and my reflection. I set my purse on the counter and examined the damage. My lip was split, but had stopped bleeding. My left cheek bore the clear imprint of my father's hand in angry red. My palm had several small cuts from the champagne glass. Nothing that required stitches, but enough to sting when I ran cold water over them. I pulled out my phone again, this time dialing a number I'd memorized but never used. 3 rings before a gravelly voice answered. "Ms. Mitchell, I was wondering when you'd call." "Hello, Mr. Fitzgerald, I believe it's time." Thomas Fitzgerald had been Derek's military attorney, handling everything from his will to some classified matters I'd never fully understood. After Derek's death, he'd given me a business card with a handwritten number on the back. "If you ever need someone to look into your family's finances," he'd said carefully, "this number will reach me day or night. Derek was worried about you. He asked me to keep an eye on things." "Are you certain?" His voice was gentle but professional. "Once we begin, there's no stopping the process." "They just publicly assaulted and humiliated me while trying to steal my home. Yes, I'm certain." "Understood. I'll contact the forensic accountant immediately. We'll have preliminary findings within 24 hours. "Thank you. Elisabeth?" He paused. "Derek would be proud of you." I ended the call, cleaned my wounds as best I could, and prepared to return to the party. As I opened the door, I found Sarah waiting outside, her phone in one hand and a first aid kit in the other. "Grace Chen keeps these on hand," she explained, guiding me to a nearby sitting area. Apparently, dramatic family confrontations are more common at society events than you'd think. She worked efficiently, cleaning the cuts on my hand with antiseptic that made me hiss. That was quite a performance out there. Madison really outdid herself. "Did you get everything?" Video and audio from 3 different angles. The look on Judge Whitmore's face alone is worth its weight in court admissibility. She applied small bandages to the worst cuts. "Your father assaulting you in front of a federal judge and a congressman probably wasn't his smartest move." "They're desperate. Madison must be in more debt than I realized if they're pushing this hard for the house." Sarah's expression turned grim. "Speaking of which, while you were making your call, I made a few of my own. That engagement ring, Madison's flashing around, it's on loan from Cartier. Bradley doesn't know. She's been forging his signature on luxury goods orders all over town." The pieces clicked into place. "That's why she needs the house. She needs to liquidate assets before Bradley finds out." It gets worse. I have a friend at the Greenwich Country Club. Madison's been banned from 3 establishments for passing bad checks. She's been using your credit history to open accounts. "My credit history? You have excellent credit, steady income history, and property in your name. All she needed was your social security number, which I'm betting your parents happily provided." I closed my eyes, absorbing this new betrayal. Identity theft. My own sister had stolen my identity to fund her fantasy lifestyle. "How bad is it?" "I won't know until we run a full credit report, but conservative estimate at least $200,000 in fraudulent debt." Jesus! "There's more." Sarah pulled out her tablet, showing me screenshots of social media posts. "Madison's been selling a very specific story to Bradley's world. According to her narrative, she's an orphan who inherited the family fortune. Her cruel relatives try to take advantage of her generous nature. I stared at the posts. Madison at charity galas she'd crashed claiming to be the primary benefactor. Madison at hospital wings taking credit for donations I'd made anonymously in Derek's name. Madison holding up checks to children's organizations, checks I'd written that she'd apparently intercepted and photographed before delivery. "She's erased me," I whispered. "She's taken my entire life and claimed it as her own." "Not erased, replaced. In her version, you're the jealous relative trying to steal her inheritance. She's been laying groundwork for months, maybe years." A knock interrupted us. Grace Chen peered around the corner, her professional composure cracked with concern. "Ms. Mitchell, I apologize for intruding, but Judge Whitmore has requested a private word with you. She's in my office." Helen Whitmore sat behind Grace's desk like she owned it, which, given her federal position and social standing, she practically did. She was an elegant woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. Those eyes took in my bandaged hand and bruised face with clinical assessment. "Sit," she commanded, and I did. "I've seen many family disputes in my career, Ms. Mitchell. Rarely have I witnessed one so public or so vicious. I apologize for the disruption to the celebration." "Don't." Her voice cut like a blade. "Don't apologize for being assaulted. Your father struck you. Your mother and sister verbally abused you. These are facts, not matters requiring your apology." She leaned forward, fingers steepled. "What concerns me more is what I've observed over the past months. My son is a brilliant man in many ways, but he has a blind spot when it comes to beautiful women with sad stories. Madison has played him expertly." The Judge Whitmore. "Helen, please. We're about to become very well acquainted, I suspect." She pulled out her own phone, showing me a series of messages. "These are texts between Bradley and Madison over the past week. Notice anything interesting?" I read through them, my stomach sinking. Madison begging Bradley not to investigate her background. Madison claiming I'd threatened her. Madison suggesting that I was mentally unstable with grief, that I might hurt myself or others to prevent her happiness. "She's setting me up." "Indeed. If you'd signed those house papers tonight, by tomorrow, you'd have been portrayed as dangerously unstable. If you'd refused, well..." She gestured to my face. "The confrontation was designed to make you look either weak or crazy. Instead, you did neither. You stood your ground and made a phone call. Care to share what that call accomplished?" I hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I've hired a forensic accountant to investigate financial irregularities. My family has been taking money from me for years, but I suspect there's more. Fraud, identity theft, tax evasion." Helen's smile was sharp as winter. "Interesting. And this accountant, would they be willing to coordinate with other investigations?" "Other investigation?" "My dear, your sister has been quite busy in Greenwich. Several families are missing heirlooms after she visited. A charity auction discovered that donated items were replaced with forgeries. And then there's the matter of the foundation." "What foundation?" "The one she's been collecting donations for. The Madison Mitchell Foundation for Disadvantaged Youth, registered in Delaware, accepting donations at Bradley's social events. I had my clerk run a basic search. It exists on paper, but no money has ever reached any children. It's all gone to fund Madison's lifestyle." Wire fraud. Federal crime. Madison hadn't just been stealing from me. She'd been running a full-scale criminal enterprise. "Bradley doesn't know any of this." "Bradley sees what he wants to see, but after tonight's display..." Helen stood smoothing her dress. "Well, let's just say the scales are falling from his eyes. Your timing with that call was impeccable, by the way. Half of Connecticut's legal elite just watched your father commit assault. The other half heard your sister confess to knowing about your finances in detail. Legally speaking, they buried themselves." She moved toward the door, then paused. A word of advice. "Whatever else you have planned, move quickly. Desperate people do desperate things, and your family just realized they're losing their meal ticket. After she left, I sat in the quiet office processing everything. Madison hadn't just wanted my house or my money. She'd wanted my entire existence rewriting history to make herself the hero of my story. The responsible daughter had been funding her replacement. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Thomas Fitzgerald's associate. We've begun preliminary investigation. You need to see this immediately." Attached was a single document. A life insurance policy taken out 3 months ago. The beneficiary, Madison Mitchell. The insured party, Elisabeth Mitchell. The amount, $2 million. My sister hadn't just been stealing from me. She'd been preparing for my death. The quiet call I'd made wasn't just about justice anymore. It might have just saved my life. I stood in the center of the Grandmont ballroom, my bandaged hand steady as I reached into my purse. The envelope I pulled out was slim, unremarkable, the kind that usually held greeting cards or invitations. But the contents would reshape everything these 88 guests thought they knew about the Mitchell family. "Madison," I called out, my voice carrying clearly through the tense silence, "I have a wedding gift for you." She laughed, the sound brittle and forced. "A gift from you? What a self-help book about letting go of the past." "Something like that." I walked toward her, slowly aware of every eye tracking my movement. You see, when someone tries to take out a life insurance policy on you, the company is required to notify you, especially when that someone has been committing identity theft. Madison's face went white, but she recovered quickly. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're clearly having some kind of breakdown." Breakdown. I pulled out my phone, connecting it to the venue's audio system with surprising ease. Grace Chen, I noticed, had discreetly enabled the connection from her position by the control panel. "Let's talk about breakdowns, shall we?" The first recording filled the ballroom. Madison's voice slurred and desperate. "Lizzie, it's me. I'm at Serenity Acres again. I need $30,000 for the premium treatment. Please, I can't let Bradley know. I'll pay you back, I swear." Madison lunged for my phone, but Bradley caught her arm. His face had taken on a grayish cast as piece after piece of his fiancé's lies crumbled. "That's private!" Madison shrieked. "You can't—" "Can't what? Share the truth?" I swiped to the next file. "This one's from 2 years ago." Dad's voice now gruff and demanding. "Elisabeth, I need $40,000 transferred by Monday. Don't ask questions. It's family business. Your mother doesn't need to know." Mom gasped. "Richard, what is that about?" "Should I tell her, Dad, or would you like to explain about your gambling debts? The ones you told me were for investments." I turned to address the room. Every crisis, every emergency, every desperate midnight call for the past decade, I kept records, receipts, bank transfers. I pulled out a folder from my purse, the one I'd been building for years, but never had the courage to use. Let's start with Dad's heart surgery, the one I paid $60,000 for. Would anyone like to guess how much the actual surgery cost after insurance? Silence. $12,000. The other $48,000 gambling debts to some very unpleasant people who threatened to break his legs. I have the threatening messages right here forwarded from his phone when he begged me to help. "You're lying." Dad stepped forward, but several men moved to block his path. I recognized them as Bradley's security team positioning themselves protectively. "Am I?" I held up hospital bills, insurance statements, wire transfer confirmations, every document notarized, every transaction traceable. Mr. Harold Fitzgerald, senior partner at Fitzgerald and Associates, has copies of everything. He also has recordings of you admitting to embezzling from your company." That stopped him cold. "How did you really think your business partner wouldn't notice $70,000 missing? Mr. Chen called me 6 months ago. I replaced the money to save your reputation and keep you out of prison. He's here tonight, by the way. Would you like to deny it to his face?" A distinguished man in his 70s stepped forward from the crowd. Victor Chen, Dad's business partner of 20 years, looked at my father with profound disappointment. It's true, every word. Elizabeth begged me not to press charges, said she'd make it right. I agreed out of respect for our history, Richard, but I never forgot. The room erupted in whispers. Phones appeared in hands, not even trying to be discreet now. This was scandal of the highest order playing out live in front of Connecticut's most influential families. Let's move on to Mom's car accident. I continued, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The one she told everyone was caused by deer on the road. Don't you dare, Mom started. Blood alcohol level of 0.18. Nearly killed a family of 4. The only reason she's not in prison is because I paid the family $250,000 to settle out of court and cover their medical bills. I held up the legal documents. The lawyer who handled it. Also here tonight, Mr. Jameson, would you care to confirm? A silver-haired man near the bar nodded gravely. Every word is true. I advised against the settlement, told Elisabeth to let justice take its course. She insisted on protecting her mother. And then there's Madison. I turned to my sister, who was now being physically held back by Bradley. 3 rehab stays for cocaine addiction, 4 arrests for shoplifting, all covered up, 5 separate instances of check fraud, and that's just what I paid for. Should we discuss what I discovered this week? Shut up, Madison screamed. Shut up, shut up, shut up. The Madison Mitchell Foundation for Disadvantaged Youth, registered in Delaware, collecting donations at every social event she attended. Total raised, according to her own records, $480,000. Total distributed to actual children, 0. The room went deadly quiet. Wire fraud, federal crime. Everyone here understood the implications. Bradley released Madison's arm as if she were contaminated. The charity events. You said the money was helping kids. It was, Madison spun to face him. It was helping me build our future. Everything I did was for us. Us, Bradley's voice cracked. You stole from children for us. I borrowed it. I was going to pay it back once we were married. With what money? I interjected. You're $600,000 in debt. Credit cards in my name, loans using my house as collateral, luxury goods bought on payment plans you never intended to honor. I turned back to the crowd, making eye contact with as many people as possible. These weren't just wedding guests anymore. They were witnesses. Well, just for 23 years, I've been the responsible daughter, the one who cleaned up their messes, paid their debts, kept their secrets. I did it out of love, out of family loyalty, out of some misguided belief that if I just helped one more time, they'd finally see me as more than a walking ATM. My voice broke slightly, and I took a breath to steady it. When Derek died, I was drowning in grief, and you know what my family did. They saw opportunity. Mom suggested I sell Derek's military memorabilia. Dad wanted me to cash in his death benefits immediately to invest in one of his schemes. Madison, I laughed bitterly. Madison asked if she could have my wedding ring since I wouldn't be needing it anymore. Gasps rippled through the room, even in this world of sometimes casual cruelty that crossed a line. But I kept helping, kept paying, kept enabling, until tonight when they decided that wasn't enough. They wanted my home, my last connection to Derek, the one thing I wouldn't give. And when I said no, I touched my bruised cheek. You all saw what happened. This is ridiculous. Dad found his voice again. She's twisting everything. We're a normal family with normal problems. Normal families don't take out life insurance policies on each other without consent, I shot back. Normal families don't commit wire fraud. Normal families don't assault each other at public events. Richard, Mr. Chen stepped forward again. I think it's time you face the truth. I've been documenting irregularities in the company finances for 2 years. Small amounts cleverly hidden. Elisabeth's payment covered the largest theft, but there have been others. I've already spoken to the district attorney. The color drained from Dad's face. Victor, we've been partners for 20 years. Which is why it took me so long to accept what you were doing. But when your own daughter has to secretly pay back money you stole from our clients' trust accounts, that ends any obligation I had to you. Trust accounts. A woman in judicial robes stepped forward, and I recognized her as Judge Patricia Thornton. Are you saying Richard Mitchell embezzled from client trust accounts? I have documentation, Mr. Chen confirmed. The judge's expression hardened. That's automatic disbarment and criminal prosecution. There's no discretion in trust account theft. Everything was unraveling faster than even I had anticipated. Each revelation triggered another like dominoes falling in perfect sequence. But the biggest revelation was yet to come. Sarah stepped forward, having worked her way through the crowd. Elisabeth, I think now would be a good time to share what the forensic accountant found. I nodded, pulling out my phone again. 1 hour ago, Mr. Fitzgerald's team discovered something interesting in Madison's financial records. She's been receiving monthly payments of $10,000 for the past 2 years. The source, a trust fund that was supposed to be held for me. What trust fund? This was news even to me until the call. Our grandmother's inheritance. She left $200,000 to each grandchild to be distributed when we turned 30. Madison got hers 4 years ago and spent it in 6 months. Mine was supposed to be held by the trustee until my birthday. I looked at my parents, the trustee being Dad. Mom's face went white. Richard, you said that money was tied up in probate? He lied. I held up the bank statements. He's been paying Madison my inheritance in monthly installments. Fraud, theft, breach of fiduciary duty. Pick your felony. Madison made a sound like a wounded animal. It was mine, I deserved it. You had Derek's money. You had the house. You had everything. I had everything. The words came out as a roar, surprising even me. I had a folded flag and a grave to visit every Sunday. I had an empty bed and a future that died with my husband. I had a family that saw my grief as an inconvenience and my generosity as weakness. You're selfish, Madison screamed. Selfish and cruel and— Judge Whitmore, I said, ignoring my sister's tantrum. I believe you mentioned other investigations. Helen Whitmore stepped forward with the presence of someone used to commanding courtrooms. Indeed, my office has been investigating a series of thefts in Greenwich. Jewelry, artwork, family heirlooms. The suspect matches Madison's description, and she was present at every affected home. You can't prove anything. Madison's voice had taken on a hysterical edge. Actually, Bradley spoke for the first time since the revelations began. His voice hollow. She can. I gave you my grandmother's necklace to wear to the Palmer charity auction. You told me it was stolen from the coat check, but Mrs. Palmer just told me she saw you leaving with it and then it appeared at a pawn shop in Hartford. The room watched as Bradley pulled out a small velvet box, the one that presumably held Madison's engagement ring. He opened it, removed the ring, and held it up to the light. This isn't even real, is it? His voice was wondering, as if seeing clearly for the first time. The certificate, the appraisal, all of it fake. Just like everything else about you. Madison's carefully constructed world collapsed entirely. She stood in her beaded gown, surrounded by the ruins of her lies, and for the first time in her life, she had nowhere to run. The silence that followed Bradley's revelation about the fake ring lasted perhaps 3 seconds before Madison exploded into motion. She lunged at me with her manicured nails extended like claws, screaming incoherently. Her designer heel caught in her gown's hem, but momentum carried her forward. I stepped back instinctively, raising my bandaged hand to protect my face. Bradley caught her mid-lunge, his athletic build finally serving a purpose beyond looking good in tennis whites. But Madison was beyond reason, thrashing in his grip like a feral cat spittle, flying as she shrieked accusations. This is all your fault. You poisoned them against me. You've been planning this for years, haven't you? Perfect Elisabeth. Saint Elisabeth. Always making me look bad. Madison, stop. Bradley struggled to restrain her without hurting her, his face a mask of bewilderment. This wasn't the elegant woman he'd proposed to. This was someone he'd never seen before. She twisted violently, and her elbow caught Judge Helen Whitmore squarely in the chest. The federal judge stumbled backward, saved from falling only by the quick reflexes of a nearby guest. The entire room gasped collectively. Assaulting a federal judge even accidentally was a serious matter. That's assault," someone murmured. Then louder, "She just struck Judge Whitmore." Security materialized as if from thin air. Not the discreet event security Grace Chen employed, but Bradley's personal team men who looked like they could bench press small cars. They moved with practiced efficiency, creating a barrier between Madison and the rest of the guests. "Don't touch me." Madison's voice had reached a pitch that made glasses vibrate. "Do you know who I am? I'm Bradley Wellington's fiancé. I'm a philanthropist. You're nobody," Bradley said quietly, and somehow his calm words cut through her hysteria more effectively than any shout. "You're a stranger who's been wearing my fiancé's face." Mom chose that moment to attempt damage control, stepping forward with her society smile plastered on despite the circumstances. "This is all a misunderstanding. Madison's just upset. Wedding planning stress, you know how it is. Elisabeth has clearly orchestrated some kind of conspiracy to ruin her sister's happiness." Sarah smoothly intercepted her lawyer instincts in full swing. "Mrs. Mitchell, are you suggesting that Elisabeth fabricated bank records, forged legal documents, and somehow convinced multiple witnesses to lie under oath because that's what you're implying?" "I'm saying my daughter, my good daughter, would never do these things you're accusing her of." "Your good daughter." I felt something snap inside me, some final thread of restraint. "Your good daughter who's been stealing my identity. Your good daughter who committed wire fraud. Your good daughter who just assaulted a federal judge. Better than a barren widow who can't move on." Mom's mask finally slipped entirely. "At least Madison tries to have a life. At least she doesn't wallow in the past, clutching at a dead man's memory." The cruelty of it took even this jaded crowd aback. Someone whispered, "My God." Another person turned away as if physically repelled, but Mom wasn't done. "Do you want to know the truth? We were relieved when Derek died. Relieved because it meant you'd finally stop playing house and remember your real family. But no, you just got worse. Mooning over his pictures, visiting that grave every week like some pathetic..." "Mrs. Mitchell." Judge Whitmore's voice cut through Mom's tirade like an Arctic wind. Despite having just been struck, she maintained perfect composure. "I suggest you stop talking before you incriminate yourself further." But Mom was beyond reason now, her carefully maintained facade crumbling like wet tissue paper. Incriminate for what? For telling the truth, for being honest about what a disappointment she's been, for conspiracy to commit fraud for one. Sarah had her phone out, fingers flying over the screen. "I'm sending the evidence files to the district attorney's office right now. Identity theft wire, fraud embezzlement. Your family has quite the portfolio of federal crimes." Madison had gone eerily still in the security team's grip, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. I knew that look. She was calculating, searching for an escape route, a mark to manipulate a story to spin. But for once, she was surrounded by people who saw through her. "Bradley," she whispered, switching tactics with dizzying speed. Tears appeared on cue mascara, creating artistic streaks down her cheeks. "Baby, please. You know me. You know the real me. Everything I did for us, for our future children." "Children." Bradley's voice was ice. "You mean the pregnancy you've been hinting at? Should we call Dr. Morrison? He's right over there. I'm sure he'd be happy to confirm whether you're actually pregnant or if that's another lie." Madison's tears dried instantly. "You wouldn't dare." "Dr. Morrison," Bradley called out. An elderly man in an excellent tuxedo looked up from his conversation. "My fiancée claims to be pregnant. Given that we've never been intimate, her choice, she wanted to wait until marriage. I'm curious about this medical miracle." The revelation sent another ripple through the crowd. Madison had been playing the virgin bride while stealing hundreds of thousands. The hypocrisy was staggering. Dr. Morrison, who'd clearly been Bradley's family physician for decades, approached with professional dignity. "Ms. Mitchell, are you claiming to be pregnant?" I, I, I might be, Madison stammered. "I've been feeling sick and—" "When was your last menstrual cycle?" "That's private." "You made it public when you announced it at your engagement party." The doctor's voice was kind but firm. "If you're pregnant, you need prenatal care. If you're not, then claiming to be is deeply concerning behavior." Madison's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Finally, she shrieked, "Fine, I'm not pregnant. Are you happy? I'm not pregnant, but I could have been. I would have been, if Elisabeth hadn't ruined everything." "How exactly did Elisabeth force you to steal money?" Judge Whitmore asked, her tone suggesting she was mentally drafting charges. "Did she hold a gun to your head while you created fraudulent charity documents? Did she force you to take out credit cards in her name?" "She didn't have to. She just existed. Perfect Elisabeth with her perfect husband and her perfect grief." Madison was spiraling, now years of resentment pouring out unfiltered. "Do you know what it's like growing up with Saint Elisabeth as your sister? Straight A's, volunteering, never getting in trouble. Mom and Dad only loved me when I screwed up because then they could fix me. But her, they were terrified of her." "Terrified?" I couldn't help but laugh. "They were terrified of me. Of losing you, their meal ticket, their responsible daughter who'd pay for everything." Madison's voice broke. "I had to be bad because you were so good. I had to be broken because you were so whole. And then when Derek died, I thought, finally you'd crack. But you just got stronger. You just kept giving and helping and being so fucking perfect." The confession hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Even Mom and Dad seemed stunned by the venom in Madison's words. This wasn't the pretty story of sibling rivalry they'd cultivated. This was something darker, more twisted. "So you decided to destroy me," I said quietly. "Not compete with me, not surpass me. Destroy me. It was supposed to be easy. You were supposed to fold. You always folded when family was involved." Madison was sobbing now, ugly, genuine tears. "But you just kept taking it. The insults, the demands, the guilt. You took it all and kept coming back, so I had to escalate. The life insurance, the identity theft, the plan to have you committed after you signed over the house." "Madison," Dad barked, but it was too late. "Committed." Sarah pounced on the word. "You were planning to have Elisabeth involuntarily committed." Madison's eyes widened as she realized what she'd admitted. No, I just meant—" "No, please continue." Judge Whitmore had her phone out now, typing rapidly. "Tell us about this plan to have your sister committed. I'm sure the federal prosecutor will be fascinated." "I want a lawyer," Madison said suddenly. "Bit late for that," someone in the crowd muttered. Bradley stepped away from Madison as if her proximity might contaminate him. He looked at me, really looked at me for perhaps the first time. "The house you live in. Derek bought it." I nodded. "With his combat pay and a deployment bonus, he wanted us to have something that was entirely ours. And your family has been living there." "I let them stay after Derek died. I couldn't. The emptiness was too much. I thought having family close would help. But they told me you were squatting in their property, that you refused to move out despite not paying rent." His face cycled through emotions, anger, humiliation, self-disgust. "I actually had my lawyer draft eviction papers. Madison said it was the kindest way to force you to move on." "Eviction papers." The hits just kept coming. "For my own house." "I'm so sorry. I believed her. Every word, the charity work, the family history, the story about you being unstable." He pulled out an envelope from his jacket. "She had these ready for tonight. After your father got you to sign the transfer, I was supposed to serve these to ensure you vacated within 30 days. I took the envelope with numb fingers. My name was listed as the defendant. The grounds for eviction included property damage, disturbing the peace, and creating an unsafe environment. All lies, but with enough family testimony, it might have worked. You were all in on it, I said, looking at my parents. This whole party, the public confrontation, it was all designed to either get me to sign or create evidence that I was unstable. Dad's silence was answer enough. But why? I asked, genuinely bewildered. I've given you everything you've ever asked for. Why wasn't it enough? Because you made us need you, Mom spat. Do you know how humiliating it is to go begging to your own daughter, to have to make up stories so the neighbors don't know we're taking money from you? You should have just given us access to everything from the beginning. Then we wouldn't have had to ask. The logic was so twisted, so fundamentally broken, that I couldn't even respond. They resented me for helping them. They hated me for having something to give. In their minds, my resources were their birthright, and requiring them to ask was the real crime. Well, I said finally, you won't have to ask anymore. As of tonight, the Bank of Elisabeth is permanently closed. You can't do that, Madison shrieked. I'll sue. I'll take everything. You'll do nothing. A new voice entered the conversation. Thomas Fitzgerald himself walked through the parting crowd, looking every inch the military lawyer despite his civilian suit, except possibly serve 5 to 10 years in federal prison. He handed me a thick folder. Preliminary findings. Your sister has been busier than we thought. The identity theft goes back 3 years. The fraud totals over $800,000. And that life insurance policy, she forged your signature. That's attempted murder for financial gain in some jurisdictions. The room erupted. Guests pulled out phones calling lawyers, police news contacts. The Mitchell family scandal would be all over Connecticut by morning, possibly national news by the weekend. Madison. Mitchell, fake philanthropist and would-be murderer, was exactly the kind of story that news outlets loved. Judge Whitmore raised her voice above the chaos. I'm calling the FBI. This involves wire fraud across state lines, which makes it federal jurisdiction. Everyone who's been named tonight needs to remain available for questioning. FBI. Mom's face went gray. For a family dispute. This stopped being a family dispute when your daughter committed wire fraud, the judge replied. It became a federal case when she crossed state lines to do it. And it became my personal interest when she assaulted me in front of 90 witnesses. Security began moving Madison toward the exit, presumably to hold her until law enforcement arrived. She fought them every step, alternating between threats and pleas, but the fight was leaving her. Reality was setting in. As they passed me, she stopped struggling long enough to meet my eyes. I hate you, she said with perfect clarity. I've always hated you. Even when we were kids, I hated you for being everything I couldn't be. I know, I replied sadly. I've known for a long time. I just loved you too much to admit it. Something flickered in her eyes, surprise maybe, or even regret, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by the familiar contempt. You're going to die alone in that house, alone with your dead husband's ghost and your empty womb. The security team pulled her away before I could respond, but I wouldn't have anyway. Her words were meant to wound, but they fell short. I might be alone, but I was free. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely free of their poison. Bradley approached me hesitantly as the chaos continued around us. Elisabeth, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry, seems inadequate. You were a mark, I said gently. She's fooled smarter people than you. Maybe, but I should have questioned things. The story about you, it never quite fit with the person who'd pay for all this. He gestured around the elegant ballroom. Someone truly selfish wouldn't have spent $90,000 on their sister's happiness. $89,600. I corrected automatically, then laughed at the absurdity of it. I can't even remember why the exact amount mattered. Because you're precise, careful, responsible. He pulled off the fake engagement ring, staring at it with disgust. Everything she pretended to be you actually are. Don't. I held up my hand. Don't turn me into something I'm not. I'm just a widow who enabled her family's dysfunction for too long. There's nothing admirable about that. You're wrong. Helen Whitmore rejoined us, having finished her call. You're a survivor, and based on what I've heard tonight, you've been surviving them your entire life. That ends now. The FBI would arrive within the hour. Local police were already on their way. The party that had begun with champagne and roses would end with handcuffs and Miranda rights. The Mitchell family empire, built on lies and sustained by my money, had collapsed in less than 60 minutes. But the evening wasn't over yet. There were still more revelations to come, more truths to be exposed. The responsible daughter had found her voice, and she had so much more to say. As police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer with each passing second, I reached into my purse one more time. The deed to my house felt heavy in my hands, weighted with more than just paper and ink. This document represented Derek's last gift to me, the future we'd planned together, the sanctuary that my family had tried to steal. Since we're being honest tonight, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the tension-filled ballroom, let's talk about the house you've all been so eager to take. Dad straightened, perhaps thinking he still had leverage. That house belongs to the family. We've been living there rent-free for 3 years, I interrupted, living in my house on my charity while plotting to steal it from me. Your house? Mom scoffed, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. We're on the deed. We've always owned that property. No. I unfolded the document, holding it up for everyone to see. Derek and I bought this house 4 years ago. His name and mine are the only ones on the deed. You've never owned it. You've never even contributed to a single mortgage payment. The silence was deafening. I watched comprehension dawn on their faces, followed quickly by rage. That's impossible, Dad sputtered. I would have known. The property taxes, the insurance. All in my name, all paid from my accounts. I pulled out more documents, bank statements, tax records, insurance policies. Did you never wonder why the bills stopped coming to the house? Why you never had to handle any of the maintenance or repairs? You've been guests in my home for 3 years and you didn't even realize it. But you said... Mom's voice trailed off as she tried to remember exactly what I'd said when they moved in after Derek's funeral. I said you could stay while I sorted things out. I said I couldn't bear the emptiness. I said family should stick together. I laughed bitterly. I never said you owned anything. You just assumed, and I let you because I was drowning in grief and desperate for any connection to normalcy. Bradley's mother had been quietly observing, but now she stepped forward. The property records would be public, easy enough to verify. Which is why I'm confused that Madison never checked, I said, looking at my sister, who was now flanked by security. All those plans to steal my house, and you never did basic due diligence. Madison's face contorted. Daddy said it was family property. He said Grandma left it to all of us. Grandma's house was sold 15 years ago to pay for her nursing home care. You were there, Madison. You complained the whole drive home about how unfair it was that old people were so expensive. I turned back to our parents. This house, the one Derek bought, the one where you've been living like royalty, has been mine from day one. You manipulative little... Dad stepped forward, fist raised again, but this time 3 different men intercepted him. The mix of security and guests who'd seen enough violence for one evening formed a human barrier. Mr. Mitchell. Judge Whitmore's voice was steel wrapped in silk. I strongly advise you to control yourself. Assault charges are serious enough without adding witness intimidation. Speaking of the house, Thomas Fitzgerald interjected, consulting his phone, my investigator just sent some interesting information. Mrs. Mitchell, were you aware that your husband took out a home equity loan against a property he doesn't own? The blood drained from Dad's face. I didn't... If $75,000 borrowed against my house using forged documents. I read from Thomas's phone screen. Let me guess, gambling debts again. It was an investment opportunity. Dad's desperation was palpable, a sure thing I was going to triple the money and pay it back before anyone noticed. Like all your other sure things, I couldn't hide my disgust. Did you even consider what would happen when the bank discovered the fraud? Or were you planning to be gone by then, leaving me to deal with the fallout? We're family, Mom shrieked. Family helps each other. Family shares. Oh, family doesn't forge signatures on loan documents. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't plot to have each other committed to steal their homes. Each word was a nail in the coffin of our relationship. You haven't been my family for years. You've been parasites. Harsh words, someone murmured in the crowd. True words, Sarah corrected. I've been Elisabeth's attorney for 5 years watching this slow-motion catastrophe. The financial abuse alone is staggering, but the emotional manipulation, the gaslighting, that's the real crime. We gave her everything. Mom turned to the crowd seeking allies. Private schools, music lessons, college tuition that I paid back in full by the time I was 25. I interrupted. Every penny you spent raising me, I've repaid 10 times over. When does the debt end? When I'm dead? The question hung heavy in the air, especially given the life insurance revelation. About that house value. Thomas continued seemingly immune to the emotional chaos around him. Current market estimate is $1.2 million. Property values in that neighborhood have tripled since the original purchase. What? Madison's screech could have shattered crystal. That dump is worth over $1 million. That dump, I said coldly, is a restored Victorian on 2 acres in the most desirable school district in Connecticut. Derek spent 6 months researching before we bought it. He knew it was undervalued. He always had an eye for potential. And you let us live there without telling us. Dad's entitlement was breathtaking. We could have sold it. Could have invested the money. Oh, it wasn't yours to sell. I spelled out each word like I was talking to a child. It was never yours. It will never be yours. And as of tonight, you'll never set foot in it again. You're evicting us. Mom clutched her fake pearls. Your own parents. Where will we go? I hear federal prison has vacancies. Someone in the crowd muttered, earning nervous laughter. You have 48 hours to collect your belongings. I continued, ignoring the interruption. Anything left after that will be donated to charity. Real charity, not Madison's fictional foundation. 48 hours. Madison tried to lunge at me again, but was held back. I have a whole life in that house. My clothes, my jewelry. Your stolen goods, you mean? I pulled out another document. This is a list of items reported missing from various Greenwich homes. Amazing how many match things in your room. The police will want to catalog those before you pack. The revelation that Madison had been storing stolen goods in my house sent another ripple through the crowd. How deep did this criminal enterprise go? You knew, Bradley asked, incredulous. You knew she was stealing and you didn't say anything? I suspected, but every time I tried to confront her, the family would close ranks. I was overreacting. I was jealous. I was trying to sabotage her happiness. I shrugged. So I documented instead. Every new piece of jewelry that appeared with no explanation. Every painting that suddenly graced the walls. Every gift from a friend that no friend ever claimed to give. Oh, the Monet sketch, Helen Whitmore said suddenly. Patricia Ashford's missing Monet sketch. Madison was the last person to see it. Hanging in the upstairs hallway, I confirmed. She told me Bradley's mother gave it to her as an engagement present. I most certainly did not. Helen's indignation was magnificent. That sketch has been missing for 6 months. 6 months of stolen art decorating my walls without my knowledge, I said. Though I suppose I should be grateful she didn't try to steal the house's original fixtures. Those restored Victorian doorknobs are worth a fortune now. This is entrapment, Madison screamed. You set me up. You let me store things there to frame me. I let my sister live in my house because she claimed to need family support. What you did while you were there is on you." I turned to the police officers who had finally arrived, their presence adding weight to an already heavy evening. "Officers, I believe you'll want to coordinate with the Greenwich Police Department. There's evidence of multiple thefts stored at my property." One of the officers, a sergeant by his stripes, stepped forward. "Ma'am, are you Elisabeth Mitchell, the homeowner?" "I am, and I'm formally reporting theft, fraud, and unlawful occupation of my property by these 3 individuals." I gestured to my family. "I'm also requesting an immediate restraining order given the assault that occurred here tonight." "We have that on video," Sarah added helpfully, her phone at the ready. Multiple angles, including the moment Mr. Mitchell struck his daughter in front of approximately 90 witnesses. 90 witnesses, including 3 federal judges, a congressman, 2 state prosecutors, and half the Greenwich legal establishment, Bradley added quietly. Dad really knows how to pick his moments. Dad had gone silent, perhaps finally understanding the magnitude of his situation. Assault, fraud, forgery, the charges were stacking up like cordwood. Mom clung to his arm, but whether for support or to prevent him from doing something else stupid was unclear. "About the house," the sergeant said, reviewing his notes. "You want them removed within 48 hours. "Yes, and I want an officer present when they collect their belongings. Given tonight's violence and the revealed fraud, I don't feel safe being alone with them." "Understandable. We can arrange that." He turned to my family. "You'll need to come with us for processing. Given the federal charges being discussed, you'll want to contact attorneys immediately." "This is all a misunderstanding." Mom tried one last time. "We're family. Families have disagreements." "Hey, families don't take out fraudulent loans against each other's property," Judge Whitmore interjected. "That's a federal crime with mandatory minimum sentences." As the police began organizing the arrest process, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, certainly. Sadness for what might have been, but mostly a bone-deep exhaustion. I'd been carrying this family for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand unburdened. "The house renovation receipts?" Thomas said quietly, showing me his phone. "You spent another $200,000 improving the property over the years. New roof, updated electrical, restored original hardwood, all while they lived there complaining about the accommodations." "I wanted it perfect," I admitted. Derek had such plans for that house. Every improvement was something from his list. His dream kitchen, his workshop in the garage, the nursery that never... I stopped, unable to finish. "The nursery," Sarah said softly. "That's why you kept it locked. They never knew about the nursery." "What nursery?" Madison demanded, even as officers prepared to escort her out. "The room Derek painted soft yellow the week before deployment. The one with clouds on the ceiling and his grandmother's rocking chair. The one we never got to use." My voice remained steady despite the pain. "You lived in my house for 3 years and never knew about the room that mattered most because you never cared enough to ask." The silence that followed was profound. Even the crowd of society elites seemed moved by the simple tragedy of it, a room painted with love for a child who would never exist in a house stolen by family who saw only property values. "We didn't know," Mom whispered, "but it was too little too late." "You didn't want to know. You wanted my house, my money, my life. But you never wanted to know me." I looked at each of them one last time. The saddest part is if you'd ever shown genuine love, genuine interest in my life beyond what you could take from it, I would have given you everything. Instead, you'll get nothing. The police led them away as the party guests watched in stunned silence. 3 members of the Mitchell family in handcuffs, heading for separate squad cars and separate fates. The family portrait they'd always insisted on projecting had finally been revealed as the forgery it always was. But there were still more truths to be told, more secrets to be exposed. The night wasn't over yet. As my family was being led away in handcuffs, a woman in her 60s pushed through the crowd with determined steps. I recognized Patricia Chen, my mother's sister, though I hadn't seen her in nearly 20 years. Mom had always insisted Patricia was difficult and jealous, but seeing her now, I wondered what the real story was. Elizabeth. Patricia's voice was firm but kind. We need to talk, privately. Sarah immediately stepped forward, protective. Mrs. Chen, this might not be the best time. It's the perfect time, Patricia interrupted. 20 years of silence ends tonight. Elizabeth deserves to know what her mother really is. Aunt Patricia. I barely remembered her, just vague memories of Christmas visits that abruptly stopped when I was 14. I thought you moved to California. I did, to get away from your mother. But when I heard about tonight's party, about what they were planning, she pulled out her phone, showing me a text conversation. Your cousin Emma sent me updates. She's been watching your family destroy you for years, too afraid to speak up. Emma. I barely knew my cousin, thanks to the mysterious family rift that Mom never explained. Now, looking at the terror in Patricia's eyes, I began to understand. Whatever you have to say, you should say it here, Thomas Fitzgerald advised, with witnesses. Given tonight's revelations, full transparency might be safest. Patricia nodded grimly. You're right. Let everyone know what Linda Mitchell really is. She turned to address the crowd that had pressed closer, hungry for more scandal. 20 years ago, our mother died. She left her estate to be divided equally between Linda and me, $500,000 each, plus family heirlooms. My breath caught. I'd been told Grandma died penniless, that there was nothing left after her medical bills. Linda was the executor. Patricia continued, her voice growing stronger. She told me the estate was consumed by debts, showed me falsified documents. I believed my own sister. Why wouldn't I? But that wasn't true. I asked, though I already knew the answer. Not a word. I discovered the truth 5 years later when I ran into Mom's attorney at a conference. He was shocked I hadn't received my inheritance. That's when I learned Linda had forged my signature, claimed the entire $1 million, and told everyone I disappeared to California with my share. $1 million! The number was staggering. She stole $1 million from her own sister, plus the heirlooms. Our grandmother's jewelry worth another $200,000 at least. The pearl necklace she's wearing tonight? Patricia pointed to where Mom stood in handcuffs. That belonged to our mother. She was supposed to leave it to me. It was promised since I was 5 years old. The revelation sent another shockwave through the crowd. My mother wasn't just a manipulator. She was a career criminal who'd started with her own family. Did you press charges? Judge Whitmore asked, her professional interest clearly piqued. I tried, but Linda had spent 5 years creating a paper trail that made it look like I'd received my share. Forged thank you notes, fake receipts, even a fraudulent loan document suggesting I'd borrowed against my inheritance. Patricia's laugh was bitter. She'd learned from our father, you see. He was a con artist too, just not as good at it. That's why you stayed away, I said slowly. Not because you were difficult or jealous, because she robbed you and made you look like the criminal. She threatened to destroy my reputation if I ever contacted you or Madison. Said she had evidence I'd embezzled from my employer documents she'd forged and hidden. Classic Linda steal from you, then blackmail you with your own victimization. The shopping addiction makes more sense now, Sarah mused. She wasn't addicted to shopping. She was addicted to spending other people's money. Oh, the shopping. Patricia's smile was sharp. Let me tell you about your mother's shopping habits, Elisabeth. Did you know she has 17 credit cards? This 17. I thought I'd known the extent of it, but apparently I'd only scratched the surface. All in different names, variations of her own maiden names. She never had middle names that don't exist. She's been running this scam for 30 years. Patricia pulled out a folder she'd been carrying. I hired a private investigator when I heard about tonight. Wanted ammunition in case she tried to destroy you like she destroyed me. She handed me the folder. Inside were credit reports, bank statements, shopping receipts that boggled the mind. My mother had been living a triple life, the respectable Connecticut matron, the secret shopaholic, and the criminal mastermind who funded it all through fraud. Holy shit, someone in the crowd whispered. Then louder, is that a receipt for a $40,000 handbag? Hermes Patricia confirmed. Bought with a credit card in the name Linda Patterson, our mother's maiden name. She's been impersonating our dead mother for financial gain. And that's identity theft of a deceased person, one of the prosecutors in the crowd noted. That's federal time. It gets worse, Patricia continued. The car accident you mentioned earlier, the one where she nearly killed a family, I have the real police report. Her blood alcohol was actually 0.23, not 0.18. And it wasn't her first drunk driving incident, it was her fifth. I felt sick, but she only had one DUI on her record. Because she used false identities for the others. Linda Patterson, Linda Chen, Linda Roberts. She has driver's licenses in all these names. Patricia showed me photos from the investigator's file. Your mother is a one-woman crime syndicate. Mrs. Chen, Thomas Fitzgerald interrupted. This evidence is crucial for federal prosecution. Would you be willing to testify? I've been waiting 20 years for someone to ask me that question. Patricia's voice was fierce. I'll testify to everything, including the fact that she poisoned our mother. The ballroom erupted. Even in a night full of revelations, this was beyond what anyone expected. Her son. I could barely get the word out. You're saying Mom? Not fatally, just enough to keep her weak, confused. Mom had announced she was changing her will, leaving everything to charity because Linda had been stealing from her. 2 days later, she was mysteriously ill. The doctors couldn't figure it out, but she never recovered enough to change the documents. You can't prove that, Mom shouted from where the police held her. You bitter old witch. You're just jealous because Mama loved me more. Oh, loved you more? Patricia laughed. She was terrified of you. We all were. You'd steal from anyone, destroy anyone. Look what you've done to your own daughters. I gave them everything. Mom's mask had completely disintegrated, revealing something ugly and desperate beneath. I gave them life. You gave them trauma, Patricia shot back. Elisabeth has spent her entire adult life paying for your crimes, literally and figuratively, and Madison. You turned her into a miniature version of yourself. Congratulations, Linda. You've successfully passed your poison to the next generation. Don't you dare! Mom tried to lunge forward but was restrained. Dare what? Tell the truth. Patricia turned back to me. Did you know she's been intercepting your mail for years? Stealing checks made out to you, depositing them in her accounts. What checks? But even as I asked, I was remembering. Birthday cards from relatives that seemed empty, wedding gifts that never materialized, sympathy cards after Derek's death that felt strangely impersonal. I've been sending you $500 every Christmas and birthday since you turned 18, Patricia said softly. 23 years of gifts you never received because your mother stole them all. The violations kept piling up, each one a fresh wound. It wasn't just about money, it was about connections, severed relationships, stolen a lifetime of isolation engineered by the woman who should have protected me. The thank you notes, I said suddenly. She always insisted on writing the thank you notes for family gifts, said it was proper etiquette. So she could maintain the fiction that you'd received them. Classic con artist behavior. Patricia pulled out a stack of cards. These are all the thank you notes she sent me in your name over the years. Notice anything? I looked through them, my stomach dropping. The handwriting was similar to mine, but not quite right. The signature was close, but definitely forged, and the language it was how Mom thought I should sound, not how I actually wrote. She's been impersonating me for decades, I whispered. Both of us. Patricia agreed. Probably Madison too. Your mother doesn't see people as individuals, she sees them as resources to be exploited. Speaking of which, there's one more thing you should know. She pulled out a final document, and I could see her hands shaking. Whatever this was, it was the worst of all. Your father's mother, your paternal grandmother, left you a trust fund. Specifically, you, not Madison, $100,000 to be given when you married. That's impossible. Dad's mother died when I was 12. She had nothing. She had plenty, and she saw what your parents were. The trust was ironclad. Only you could access it, only upon marriage, only with proper documentation. Patricia's eyes were full of sympathy. You did get married. Derek was a legal marriage, which means they stole that too. The words came out flat, emotionless. I'd moved beyond anger into something colder. Your mother forged the marriage certificate claimed to be you and emptied the trust 2 weeks after your wedding. The bank records are all here. I looked at the evidence of yet another betrayal. While Derek and I were on our honeymoon building dreams and planning our future, my mother was stealing the money his grandmother had tried to protect for me. $100,000, I said numbly. Do you know what Derek and I could have done with that? He wanted to start a flight school after the military, train young pilots. We had it all planned out, but we thought we couldn't afford it. Now you know why, Patricia said gently. Every time you tried to build something, Linda was there siphoning it away. She's not a mother. She's a parasite that happened to give birth. Parasite, Mom shrieked. I'm her mother. I deserve respect. I deserve 20 to life. Judge Whitmore interrupted coldly. Between the identity theft fraud, elder abuse, and what sounds like attempted murder, you deserve decades in federal prison. You can't prove any of it. But Mom's protest was weak, the bravado fading as reality set in. Actually, a new voice interjected, we can. A man in an expensive suit stepped forward, and I recognized him as James Morrison, one of the city's most prestigious bank presidents. Ms. Mitchell, I apologize for not speaking up sooner, but I needed to verify something first. He held up his phone. I've just confirmed with our fraud department. Your mother has been on our watch list for 15 years. We've been building a case waiting for someone to file a formal complaint. 15 years. I couldn't process it. You knew for 15 years and did nothing. We couldn't act without a victim coming forward. Financial institutions can flag suspicious activity, but we need formal complaints to prosecute. Your mother was very careful to keep individual thefts below federal thresholds, to use family relationships that made victims reluctant to report. He looked genuinely remorseful. We have evidence of over $3 million in fraudulent transactions over 2 decades. $3 million. The number was so large it became meaningless. How does someone steal $3 million and maintain the facade of middle-class respectability? The house in Vermont, I said, suddenly remembering. She always said it was a timeshare, but she owns it outright, Patricia confirmed. Bought with stolen money hidden through shell companies. There's also a condo in Florida and investment accounts in the Caymans. Your college friend was right. Linda Mitchell is a one-woman crime syndicate. I looked at my mother, really looked at her for perhaps the first time. The woman who'd given birth to me, who'd made me school lunches and attended parent-teacher conferences, who'd also systematically destroyed every relationship I might have had with extended family while robbing me blind. Why? The question came out as barely a whisper. Why did you have children if you only saw us as things to exploit? For just a moment, something flickered in Mom's eyes, not remorse exactly, but maybe recognition. Then it was gone, replaced by the familiar contempt. Children are supposed to take care of their parents, she said flatly. That's the natural order. I fed you, clothed you, kept you alive. You owed me everything in return. I owed you love, I corrected, and I gave it, freely, endlessly, even when you didn't deserve it. But that's over now. You can't abandon family, Mom's voice cracked. It's not right, it's not... Family. I laughed the sound hollow. You stole my inheritance, my identity, my relationships, my mail, my trust fund, and tried to steal my house. You're not family. You're just criminals who happen to share my DNA. The police began moving them toward the exit, but Mom twisted around for one last verbal assault. You'll regret this. You'll die alone and miserable, and no one will mourn you. No one will. That's where you're wrong, Patricia interrupted, moving to stand beside me. She has family, real family, the ones you've kept from her for 20 years. She squeezed my shoulder. Elisabeth, there are 17 cousins who've been waiting to meet you, aunts and uncles who've wondered what happened to Richard's eldest daughter. A whole family you never knew existed because Linda made sure to cut those ties. 17 cousins. I felt tears threaten for the first time all evening. Including my Emma, who's studying to be a lawyer specifically so she could help you when the time came. We've all been waiting, hoping you'd finally break free. As the police finally removed my parents and Madison from the ballroom, I stood surrounded by strangers who'd witnessed the complete destruction of my fake family and the first glimpse of a real one. Patricia's arms around me felt more maternal than anything I'd experienced in years. But the night still wasn't over. There were more revelations to come, more truths to face. The responsible daughter had burned down her past. Now it was time to see what could be built from the ashes. The grand entrance doors of the Grandmont estate burst open, just as my family was being escorted out. A man in an expensive but ill-fitting suit strode in, flanked by two larger men who looked like they bench-pressed small cars for fun. I recognized the leader immediately, Vinnie Torino, a name whispered in certain Connecticut circles as someone you never wanted to owe money to. "Where's Richard Mitchell, Budge?" Vinnie's voice carried across the ballroom like a whip crack. "I heard there was a family party tonight. Figured it was time to collect." The police officers paused, hands moving instinctively toward their weapons, but Vinnie raised his hands in a peaceable gesture. "Easy, officers. I'm a legitimate businessman here to discuss a legitimate debt. Got paperwork and everything." Dad's face, already pale from the arrest, went absolutely white. He tried to shrink behind the officers, but there was nowhere to hide. "Mr. Mitchell." Vinnie's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "There you are. Boys, look who we found. The man who owes us $275,000. The ballroom, which had been buzzing with shocked conversation, fell silent again. This number dwarfed everything else we'd discussed tonight. 275,000. I heard my own voice hollow with disbelief. "Dad, what did you do?" It was supposed to be a sure thing. Dad mumbled, not meeting anyone's eyes. "The horse couldn't lose. Fixed race. Inside information." Fixed race. Vinnie laughed, the sound genuinely amused. "Richie, you believed that? From Joey 2 times, the man who got his nickname because he always lies twice." He turned to address the crowd. "This genius here borrowed 50 grand to bet on a horse that came in dead last. Literally, the horse died mid-race." Someone in the crowd gasped. Others pulled out phones, either recording or Googling the infamous race. "But 50,000 isn't 275,000. Thomas Fitzgerald observed, his lawyer instincts engaged. "Ah, that's where interest comes in," Vinnie explained, pulling out a small notebook. "See, when someone borrows from us and doesn't pay back within 30 days, we charge a modest interest rate, 20%. 20% monthly," Judge Whitmore interjected. "That's usury. It's illegal." "Allegedly illegal," Vinnie corrected with a wink. "But we're not here to discuss legal theory. We're here because Richie's been dodging us for 18 months. 50 grand became 75, became 150, became 275. Math is a beautiful thing." "I paid you," Dad protested. "I gave you 60,000. "You gave your daughters money," Vinnie corrected. "Yeah, we know all about that. Poor Elisabeth here paying for Daddy's sins. But here's the thing, that payment was 8 months ago. The interest kept running." I felt sick. The heart surgery money. Dad hadn't just lied about needing it for medical bills. He'd used my money to pay off loan sharks, and it still wasn't enough. "Mr. Torino." I stepped forward, ignoring Sarah's attempt to hold me back. How much of that supposed debt is legitimate principal versus manufactured interest? Vinny studied me with interest. You're the responsible daughter, Derek Mitchell's widow. Sorry for your loss, by the way. He was a good man. Used to drink at my cousin's bar when he was on leave. Oh, thank you. Now about the debt. Original loan was $50,000. Your father made 3 more loans trying to win back the first 120 here, 30 there. Total principal borrowed $120,000. He showed me the notebook, surprisingly neat records in careful handwriting. The rest is interest and late fees. So he legitimately borrowed $120,000 for gambling. Over 6 separate occasions. Each time swearing it was a sure thing. Each time losing spectacularly. Vinny shook his head. Your old man has the worst luck I've ever seen. Bet on a boxer who knocked himself out. Bet on a basketball team that forfeited due to food poisoning. It's almost impressive. I had systems, Dad interjected desperately. Mathematical probability. It should have worked. The only system that works in gambling, Vinny said patiently, like explaining to a child, is owning the house, which I do. Several of them, in fact. Bradley's mother leaned over to whisper something to one of the prosecutors. I caught the words RICO and federal investigation. This was bigger than just my father's debts. Here's what's going to happen, Vinny continued, still maintaining his reasonable businessman facade. Richie here is going to prison from what I'm seeing. That makes collection complicated, but debts don't disappear just because someone's in orange jumpsuit. You can't transfer gambling debts to family members, Sarah spoke up. That's not how law works. You're right, counselor, but here's where it gets interesting. Vinny pulled out another document. 6 months ago, Richie here signed over collateral for his latest loan. Want to guess what he used? My stomach dropped before he even said it. The house! He used Elisabeth's house as collateral. Forged deed, forged signatures, but very convincing work. He showed me the papers, and even I had to admit the forgery was excellent. Now, obviously, this is fraudulent. Can't enforce a fraudulent contract, but it shows intent, doesn't it? Shows what kind of man we're dealing with. He tried to give you my house. The betrayals just kept coming. The house Derek bought. The house where he's been living rent-free. Living like a king from what we heard, telling everyone it was family property, hosting poker games in your basement. Oh, you didn't know about those? Vinny seemed genuinely sympathetic. Every Thursday night, buy-in was $1,000. He was using your home as an underground casino. The basement renovations, I said faintly. He said he was building a workshop. Workshop for separating marks from their money, maybe? Vinny turned back to Dad. But here's the real reason for my visit tonight. Richie, you've been selling information about your daughter. Financial information to some very bad people. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. What kind of information? Thomas Fitzgerald's voice had gone deadly quiet. Bank accounts routines when she's alone in that big house. Everything someone would need for a kidnapping and ransom operation. Vinny's friendly mask slipped, revealing something much more dangerous underneath. And that crosses a line. I may charge interest, but I don't trade in human misery. Kidnapping. I couldn't process it. Dad, you were setting me up to be kidnapped. It wasn't like that. Dad's desperation had reached new heights. They just wanted to know if you had money. I didn't know what they planned. Bullshit, Vinny said flatly. They offered you a finder's fee, 10% of whatever ransom they collected. You negotiated for 15. The room erupted. Several people were calling 911 even though police were already present. The federal prosecutors were conferring urgently, and Dad had gone so still he might have been carved from stone. He whispered, I wouldn't have let them actually do it. When? I demanded. When would you have warned me? After they grabbed me from the parking lot, after I was tied up in some warehouse? Or would you have just collected your percentage and played the grieving father? His silence was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, Vinny announced. I'm writing off Richie's debt. Full forgiveness, because I want nothing to do with this family ever again. He turned to me. Mrs. Mitchell, you'll find all the evidence about the kidnapping plot in this envelope. Security footage from the meetings, audio recordings, the works. My organization has many flaws, but we draw the line at hurting innocent women. Why, I had to ask. Why help me? Because Derek Mitchell saved my nephew's life in Afghanistan. Tommy Torino, Marine Corps. Your husband pulled him out of a burning vehicle under heavy fire. Vinny's expression softened. I've been keeping an eye on you since Derek passed, making sure none of my less scrupulous competitors bothered his widow. Imagine my surprise when the biggest threat came from your own family. He handed me the envelope, then turned back to Dad with disgust. You sold out your own daughter, your own flesh and blood. In my world, family is everything. You protect family even if it costs you everything. But you, he spat on the marble floor, you're not even worth the interest you owe. As Vinny and his associates left, the full weight of this final betrayal crashed over me. Dad hadn't just stolen from me, hadn't just lied to me. He'd literally tried to sell me to kidnappers for a 15% commission. Jesus Christ, someone in the crowd muttered. How is she still standing? Elisabeth. Judge Whitmore approached carefully as if I might shatter. The attempted kidnapping conspiracy makes this a federal case. The FBI will take over immediately. You'll need protection until we round up all the conspirators. Protection from my own father, I said numbly. He was gonna let them take me. I was desperate. Dad exploded, his careful control finally snapping. Do you know what it's like watching you sit on all that money while I struggled, while I had debts, while people threatened to break my legs? So you decided to let them break mine instead. You would have been fine. They just wanted money, and you have plenty. Insurance would have covered it. Insurance! I laughed, the sound borderline hysterical. You thought my life was worth an insurance payout. Better than my life being worth nothing. He was ranting now, all pretense gone. You got everything, Derek's money, the house, freedom. What did I get? A nagging wife, a useless younger daughter, and bills I couldn't pay. You got a daughter who loved you, I said quietly, who would have done anything for you, who did do everything for you, and it still wasn't enough. The FBI arrived then, a full tactical team that spoke to how seriously they took kidnapping conspiracies. They took possession of Vinny's envelope and began interviewing witnesses. Dad was separated from Mom and Madison, his charges now far more serious than anyone had imagined. Ms. Mitchell, the lead agent, a woman with sharp eyes and graying temples, addressed me. I'm Special Agent Rivera. We'll need you to come into protective custody immediately. If there's an active kidnapping plot, you're not safe until we neutralize all threats. Tonight, I gestured vaguely at the chaos around us, but there's so much still happening. Which is why we need to move now. Your father may have given them tonight as an opportunity with you distracted and vulnerable. The thought chilled me. While I'd been confronting my family, kidnappers might have been moving into position. Every shadow suddenly seemed threatening, every stranger a potential threat. I'll go with her, Sarah announced, as her attorney. And I, Patricia added firmly, as her actual family. We'll need to secure the house as well, Agent Rivera continued. If they have inside information... They have everything, I interrupted. Dad knew the security codes, the spare key locations, my schedule. He lived there. He could have given them complete access. Another violation. My home, my sanctuary, turned into a trap by the man who'd raised me. We'll handle it, Agent Rivera assured me. But first, we need to get you somewhere safe. As they prepared to escort me out, I took one last look around the ballroom. The engagement party that had started with such promise had become a crime scene. Madison's cake sat untouched, its perfect frosting, now seeming like a metaphor for our family beautiful surface hiding something rotten. Bradley stood near his mother, looking shell-shocked. He caught my eye and mouthed, "I'm sorry." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He'd been a victim too in his way. Madison had played us all. "Ready?" Agent Rivera asked. "One moment." I walked over to where my parents and Madison were being held separately awaiting transport. I needed to say something to find closure somehow. "Dad," I said quietly. He looked up, and for just a moment, I saw the man who taught me to ride a bike, who'd walked me down the aisle at my wedding. Then his expression hardened, and he was a stranger again. "I hope it was worth it," I said simply. "All the money, all the lies, all the betrayal. I hope it bought you something worth losing your daughter for." He opened his mouth, closed it, then looked away. There was nothing left to say. Mom and Madison didn't even look at me. They sat in their own worlds of denial, probably already spinning stories about how this was all my fault, how I'd orchestrated their downfall out of jealousy or greed. "Now I'm ready," I told Agent Rivera. As we left the Grandmont estate, I realized I was leaving more than just a disastrous party. I was leaving behind 34 years of toxic relationships, of enabling and being used, of pouring love into a bottomless pit. But I was also leaving with something precious, the truth. After years of gaslighting and manipulation, I finally knew exactly who my family was. And more importantly, I knew who I was without them. The responsible daughter was dead. In her place stood someone harder, sadder, but infinitely freer. Someone who'd survived her own family's attempts to destroy her. Someone who was finally ready to live. The FBI safe house was a modest colonial in Westport, unremarkable, except for the discreet security measures and the agents stationed at every entrance. Sarah had refused to leave my side, transforming the dining room into a makeshift legal war room within hours of our arrival. Patricia had gone to gather my cousins, promising to return with the family you should have had all along. "All right," Sarah said, spreading documents across the table with the efficiency of someone who'd been preparing for this moment for years. "Let's talk about what happens next. Because your family, they didn't just commit crimes. They committed an interconnected web of federal and state felonies that make Watergate look like a parking violation." Agent Rivera sat across from us, having shed her tactical gear for a simple suit that somehow made her look even more formidable. "Ms. Montgomery, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but our primary concern is the kidnapping conspiracy. Is directly connected to the financial crimes," Sarah interrupted smoothly. "The kidnapping plot was born from desperation over gambling debts, which were hidden through embezzlement, and fraud, which was funded by identity theft and elder abuse. You pull one thread, the whole sweater unravels." She pulled out a legal pad covered in her neat handwriting. "Let's start with the immediate protections. Elisabeth, I've already filed for emergency restraining orders against all 3 family members. But that's just the beginning." The beginning. I was exhausted, running on adrenaline and shock. "Sarah, it's been 6 hours of revelations. What else could there possibly be?" "Recovery," she said simply, "and justice. Real justice, not just criminal charges. You've been financially abused for over a decade. It's time to get your money back." "The money's gone. They spent it on assets that can be seized," Sarah interrupted. "The Vermont house Patricia mentioned, purchased with stolen funds. The cars, the jewelry, the art collection Madison accumulated, all traceable to fraud. Even their everyday purchases, remember those Hermes bags, those can be liquidated." Agent Rivera leaned forward. "You're talking about asset forfeiture." "I'm talking about complete financial recovery. Connecticut has some of the strongest financial elder abuse laws in the country, and they apply to adult children defrauded by their parents." Sarah pulled out another folder. "I've been documenting Elisabeth's case for 5 years, waiting for her to be ready. Every check she wrote, every transfer she made, every loan she covered. Total damages, $3.7 million. 3.7... I couldn't even finish the sentence. "That includes interest and penalties. But here's where it gets interesting." Sarah's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Your parents committed these crimes while living in your house, under Connecticut law that makes the crimes aggravated because they abused a position of trust, triple damages. $11 million. Even Agent Rivera looked shocked. Plus legal fees, plus punitive damages for emotional distress, plus the attempted kidnapping conspiracy, which opens up federal civil rights violations. Sarah turned to me. Elisabeth, conservatively, your family owes you $15 million they don't have, which means we get to take everything they do have and garnish everything they might earn for the rest of their lives. The numbers were so large they became abstract, but one thing was an abstract justice. I don't want revenge, I said quietly. I just want to be free of them. This isn't revenge. This is restoration. Sarah's voice gentled. They took more than money from you. They took opportunities, relationships, your sense of safety. We can't get all of that back, but we can ensure they never do it to anyone else, and we can make sure you're compensated for what was stolen. How do we even begin? We've already begun. Sarah pulled out her phone, showing me a series of emails. While you were being processed at the safe house, I've been busy. First, I contacted the IRS. Did you know your parents have been claiming you as a dependent on their taxes while simultaneously taking money from you? That's tax fraud on top of everything else. Of course it is, I muttered. Second, I've frozen all accounts associated with your social security number. Madison can't access any more credit in your name. Third, I've notified all 3 credit bureaus about the identity theft and initiated a full fraud alert. Your credit will be locked down tighter than Fort Knox. What about the house? Already handled. I filed an emergency motion with the property court. Your parents have been served with immediate eviction notices effective the moment they make bail, which, given the federal charges, they won't. She showed me another document. I also hired a security company to change all locks codes and install a new system. No one gets in without your explicit permission. Sarah, when did you... The moment your father slapped you. I knew this night would end with arrests, so I started preparing. She pulled out more papers. Now let's talk about the fake engagement party contract. Madison added $44,000 in charges after you signed. That's contract fraud. Grace Chen has already agreed to testify that Madison explicitly stated you'd approved everything. $90,000 for a fake engagement party. I shook my head. Bradley must be devastated. Bradley's family is handling their own legal response. Helen Whitmore called me an hour ago. Turns out Madison stole more than just his grandmother's necklace. She's been slowly emptying his investment accounts using forged signatures. Another $200,000 gone. Agent Rivera whistled low. Your sister was ambitious. Desperate, Sarah corrected. The forensic accountant found something interesting. Madison owes money to some very dangerous people. Not mob dangerous, worse. White-collar criminals who launder money through charity fraud. She was in deep and trying to dig her way out using everyone else's shovel. The foundation. I said, understanding dawning. She wasn't just stealing donations. She was washing money. Exactly, which brings us to RICO charges. Sarah's grin was positively feral now. Your family wasn't just committing individual crimes. They were operating as an organized criminal enterprise. Mom handled identity theft and credit fraud. Dad managed embezzlement and gambling operations. Madison ran charity fraud and money laundering. They used your house as a base of operations. My house was a criminal headquarters. The violations just kept multiplying, which means it can be seized as evidence. Don't worry, she added quickly, seeing my expression. I've already filed injunctions to protect it as a crime victim's primary residence, but everything inside that belongs to them. Fair game for seizure. She pulled out an inventory list. Madison's room alone contains approximately $500,000 in stolen goods. Your mother's closet has another $300,000 in items purchased with fraudulent credit. Your father's office... She paused dramatically. Full records of his embezzlement going back 15 years. He kept everything probably for blackmail purposes. Blackmail. Oh, that's the best part. Your dad wasn't just stealing from his company, he was stealing with his company. At least 3 other executives were in on it. Mr. Chen only knew about your father's part, but the FBI forensic accountants are finding a massive corporate fraud scheme. Agent Rivera was taking rapid notes. This is bigger than just a family dispute. It's a federal case that could take down half of Connecticut's old boys network, Sarah agreed. But let's focus on Elisabeth's immediate needs. First, we need to secure all her assets. The main house, obviously, but also Derek's military benefits. There's a strong possibility they tried to access those too. They couldn't, I said firmly. Those require biometric authentication. Derek made sure of that. Smart man, but they might have tried other approaches. Identity theft, forged documents, fake death certificates. Fake death certificates. Sarah's expression darkened. Your mother filed a death certificate for you in Delaware 3 months ago. Different spelling of your name, but same social security number. It was probably preparation for the life insurance fraud. I felt cold despite the warm room. She was planning to have me declared dead. Or actually dead. The kidnapping plot might have been Plan B. Plan A could have been more permanent. You're saying my family was planning to murder me? The words sounded absurd even as I said them. I'm saying we should check if there were any unusual purchases of anti-freeze rat poison or other household toxins, Sarah said grimly. Patricia mentioned your grandmother's mysterious illness. Patterns tend to repeat in families like yours. Agent Rivera stood abruptly. I need to make some calls. If there's potential attempted murder, that changes our entire investigation. As she left, Sarah reached across the table to squeeze my hand. I know this is overwhelming, but we're going to get through this. And when we're done, you'll be free. Truly free, with enough financial security to never worry about money again. It's not about the money, I said. It never was. I know, but money is how they kept you trapped. Financial abuse is still abuse, and recovery includes financial recovery. She pulled out one final document. Which brings me to Derek's life insurance. What about it? You never claimed it. I couldn't. It felt like admitting he was really gone. Elisabeth. Sarah's voice was infinitely gentle. He is gone. But he left you that money because he loved you, because he wanted you protected, letting it sit unused while you suffered. That's not honoring his memory. That's punishing yourself. Tears finally came, then 3 years of suppressed grief mixing with the night's revelations. Sarah moved around the table to hold me while I sobbed. We're going to claim that insurance, she said firmly. We're going to recover everything your family stole. We're going to prosecute every crime they committed. And then you're going to live, really live, not just survive, not just endure. Live. I don't even know how anymore. You'll learn. With your real family, the cousins Patricia mentioned. With friends who actually care about you. With the foundation Derek dreamed of creating. She pulled back to look at me. Oh, I didn't mention that part. I've already filed paperwork to establish the Derek Mitchell Memorial Flight School. Fully funded, ready to launch as soon as you are. Sarah, how? 5 years of planning. Remember, I knew this day would come. I just had to wait for you to be ready. She smiled through her own tears. Your family thought they were so clever playing the long game, but they forgot something important. You weren't alone. You had me. You had Patricia keeping watch from afar. You had Mr. Chen documenting your father's crimes. You had Grace Chen protecting you tonight. Even Vinnie Torino, in his own twisted way, was looking out for Derek's widow. An entire network of people protecting me that I never knew about. Because your family isolated you so effectively you couldn't see it. But we were always there, waiting, planning, preparing for the moment you finally said no. A knock interrupted us. Agent Rivera returned with 2 other agents and a grim expression. We just executed search warrants at the house. We found enough evidence to add attempted murder charges. Your mother had a storage unit full of research on untraceable poisons. Your father had detailed notes on your daily routines, including when you took medication. And Madison? She paused. Madison had a syringe in her purse tonight. Preliminary field test suggests insulin. Are you diabetic? No, I whispered, but a massive insulin injection to a non-diabetic would cause severe hypoglycemia, potentially fatal. She was probably planning to inject you during the confrontation, make it look like you'd collapsed from stress. The pieces clicked into place. The way Madison had lunged at me, the strange angle of her attack. She hadn't been trying to scratch me. She'd been trying to inject me. They all came to kill me tonight, I said with strange calm. The whole family. They came to my sister's engagement party planning to murder me. But they failed, Sarah said fiercely. They failed because you were stronger than they expected. Because you had protection they didn't know about. Because Derek is still watching over you through the people who loved him. I thought about that. About Derek's lawyer keeping watch. About his favorite bar owner's cousin protecting me from predators. About the judge and prosecutors who'd stepped forward tonight. About Sarah, wonderful Sarah, who'd spent 5 years building an invisible fortress around me. They never had a chance, did they? I asked. Once I said no, once I stood my ground, they'd already lost. They lost the moment they underestimated you, Sarah agreed. Now let's make sure they pay for it. Every crime, every theft, every moment of pain they caused. We're going to document it all, prosecute it all, and recover from it all. And then you live happily ever after. Not a fairy tale ending, those don't exist, but a real ending, a human ending, a free ending. As Agent Rivera's team continued their work and Sarah returned to her legal documents, I sat in that modest safe house and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not the fragile hope that my family might change, but real hope. Hope for a future without them. Hope for the life Derek had wanted me to have. Hope that the responsible daughter's death might mean Elisabeth Mitchell could finally be born. The night wasn't over yet. There were still more revelations to come, more truths to uncover, but for the first time I wasn't afraid of them. I had an army of my own now, and we were winning. By dawn, the safe house had transformed into something between a family reunion and a war council. Patricia had returned with an entourage that filled every available space in the modest colonial. 17 cousins, several aunts and uncles, and even a few second cousins had driven through the night from various parts of New England to finally meet the mysterious Elisabeth they'd been forbidden to contact. "Everyone, please." Patricia called for attention as the sun painted the Connecticut sky pink and gold. "I know we're all excited, but Elisabeth has been through hell. Let's not overwhelm her." But I wasn't overwhelmed. I was mesmerized. These people, these strangers who shared my blood, looked at me with such warmth, such genuine concern. It was like seeing what family was supposed to be. Emma stepped forward, first Patricia's daughter, my cousin, who'd apparently been monitoring my situation for years. She was young, maybe 25, with intelligent eyes behind designer glasses and a legal pad already in hand. "Elisabeth," she said softly, "I'm Emma Chen. I'm in my 3rd year at Yale Law, and I've been writing my thesis on financial abuse within family structures. I've been using your case as a theoretical model, though I had no idea how much worse it actually was. You've been studying me." "Not studying, watching, waiting, hoping." She pulled out a thick binder. "Every public record, every social media post, every time your family flaunted their crimes. I've been documenting it all, building a case for when you finally broke free." "What?" I had to ask. "You don't even know me." "Because family protects family," an older man said, stepping forward. I recognized him vaguely, Uncle Frank, my father's older brother, and because we failed you once. We let Richard and Linda isolate you. We won't fail you again. Uncle Frank, I hadn't seen him since I was 12. Dad said you moved to Alaska. Richard said a lot of things, most of them lies. Frank's expression was grim. I moved to Boston, 20 minutes away, but every time I tried to visit, your parents had some excuse. You were sick, you were traveling, you were too busy. Eventually, they threatened to call the police if I kept harassing them. But why would they? Because of this. Frank pulled out an old checkbook. 15 years ago, your parents borrowed $50,000 from me, swore it was for your college tuition, even had fake acceptance letters from Princeton to show me. I went to state school, I said numbly, on academic scholarship. I know. Found that out later. But by then they'd convinced the rest of the family I was lying about the loan, said I was trying to shake them down for money. His laugh was bitter. Classic Richard. Steal from someone, then destroy their reputation so no one believes them. More family members began sharing their stories, each one a variation on the same theme. Aunt Rebecca, who'd lent them $30,000 for a medical emergency that never existed. Cousin Michael, whose identity had been stolen by Madison when she was just 17. Uncle James, who'd been accused of inappropriate behavior when he'd tried to intervene in their treatment of me. They isolated you systematically. Emma explained her legal training evident. It's textbook abuse tactics. Cut off support systems create financial dependence, establish themselves as the only source of truth in your life. They've been running this playbook since before you were born. Before I was born. Patricia nodded grimly. Your paternal grandmother left letters. We found them after her death. She knew what Richard was trying to protect any future grandchildren. That's why she set up the trust fund they stole. She was trying to give you an escape route. Sarah, who'd been listening while organizing legal documents, suddenly looked up. Wait, you said letters plural. How many? Dozens, Patricia replied, all documenting Richard's thefts, Linda's manipulations, their joint operations. Grandma Mitchell was a court reporter. She knew how to document evidence. Where are these letters now? Agent Rivera asked, having been drawn by the gathering crowd. Safe deposit box in Boston, Frank said. Been waiting for the right moment to use them. Guess that moment is now. Sarah was already typing on her laptop. This changes our case significantly. Documented evidence of pattern behavior going back decades that turns this from isolated incidents into generational organized crime. There's more. A young woman spoke up. I didn't recognize her, but she had the Mitchell nose and Dad's eyes. I'm Julie, your second cousin. My mom is Richard's cousin Diane. We lived in Riverside until I was 10. Used to play together when you were really little. Just Julie. A vague memory surfaced, a girl with pigtails who'd taught me to make daisy chains. Your parents ended our friendship when my mom refused to lend them money, but I never forgot you. She pulled out her phone. I've been taking photos at every family event your parents attended. Look. The images were damning. My parents at various gatherings wearing expensive clothes and jewelry while telling everyone they were struggling. Madison flashing stolen goods while the actual owners stood nearby unaware. Dad slipping cash to various shady-looking individuals at what were supposed to be family barbecues. This is from last Christmas, Julie continued. Your mom telling everyone you'd abandoned them, that you were mentally unstable, that they were terrified you'd hurt yourself. Meanwhile, she's wearing a coat that cost more than my car. They told people I was unstable. Well, laying groundwork, Emma said clinically. If you ever spoke up, they'd already established a narrative that you were unreliable. It's actually brilliant in its malevolence. Don't admire it, Patricia scolded. I'm not admiring, I'm analyzing. Know your enemy and all that. Emma turned to me. But here's what they didn't count on. Paper trails, digital footprints, and 17 cousins with very good memories and even better documentation habits. An older woman I didn't recognize stepped forward hesitantly. Elisabeth, I'm your great-aunt Meredith, Richard's aunt. I need to tell you something about your father. The room fell silent. Meredith was ancient, probably in her 90s, but her eyes were sharp and clear. Richard was always wrong, she said simply. Even as a boy, he'd steal from his siblings, then convince them they'd lost the items. He once pushed his younger brother down the stairs, then convinced everyone the boy had jumped. The manipulation started young. You're saying he's a sociopath? I asked. I'm saying evil exists, and sometimes it's born into families that don't deserve it. She pulled out a yellowed envelope. His mother, your grandmother, wrote this before she died. Asked me to give it to you when you were ready. I think you're ready now. With trembling hands, I opened the letter. My grandmother's handwriting was shaky but clear. My dear Elisabeth, if you're reading this, then you've finally seen the truth about your father. I'm sorry. I'm so very sorry. I tried to protect you, but I was old and tired, and he was so clever. The trust fund is yours, only yours. The house documents are in the Boston box. The evidence of his crimes is extensive. Use it all. Save yourself. Don't let him destroy you like he destroyed so many others. You are the light in a very dark family. Stay bright. All my love, Grandma Mitchell. House documents. I looked up at Frank. The Vermont house Patricia mentioned. It was originally Grandma's. She left it to you, not your parents. They forged the transfer documents. So even their theft was stolen goods, Sarah muttered, typing furiously. This is incredible. Every crime has another crime underneath it. Like nesting dolls of fraud, Emma agreed. Each one you open reveals another violation. More cousins stepped forward with stories. Tom, who'd been threatened when he'd tried to contact me on Facebook. Mary, who'd hired a private investigator to find me only to be told I'd filed a restraining order against her, a complete lie. David, who'd tried to warn Derek about my family before our wedding, only to be intercepted and threatened by my father. Derek knew this hit differently than the other revelations. Derek knew about them. He suspected, David confirmed, came to me since I was a cop, asked me to look into some inconsistencies, but then he got deployed, and when he came back, he was focused on our future, I finished. He said we should make a clean start. I thought he meant emotionally. He meant literally, didn't he? He was planning to get me away from them. The house purchase makes more sense now, Sarah mused. He bought it through an LLC, made it ironclad legally. He was building you a fortress. And then he died, and they moved into my fortress. The irony was bitter. Used his protection as their base of operations. But his protection held, Patricia pointed out. They could live there, but they couldn't steal it. Even in death, Derek was protecting you. The morning sun was fully up now, streaming through the windows and illuminating faces that looked like mine. Different variations on his genetic theme, but all sharing something: my immediate family lacked genuine concern for others. Why now? I asked the room at large. Why did you all come together now? Dua the slap, Emma said simply. When Patricia called and said Richard had hit you in public in front of witnesses, we knew it was ending. Either they'd finally destroy you, or you'd finally break free. We came to make sure it was the latter. Has 17 cousins, oh, I marveled. I have 17 cousins I never knew existed. 23, actually, Emma corrected, but 6 are deployed overseas. Military family tradition, apparently. They're watching via video chat. She turned her phone, showing me faces in various military uniforms, all wearing expressions of concern and anger. We've got your 6th cousin? One of them said, a Marine whose name tag read Mitchell. Family protects family. Real family anyway. I don't even know your names, I said, tears threatening again. We have time, Patricia assured me, all the time in the world to build real relationships. But first, we need to finish what was started last night. Emma, my cousin, stood suddenly all business. Based on the evidence collected here, plus what Sarah's already documented, we have enough to ensure your biological family never hurts anyone again. But more importantly, we have enough to restore what was stolen, not just money, relationships, years of lost connections. The birthday parties you missed, someone said. The weddings you weren't invited to. The funerals where you should have been mourning with us. Christmases, Thanksgivings, random Sunday dinners. All of it stolen, Patricia summarized, but we're taking it back, starting now. Agent Rivera, who'd been observing quietly, finally spoke. This is remarkable. In 20 years of law enforcement, I've never seen a family mobilized like this to protect one of their own. That's because you've never seen a Mitchell family reunion, Frank said with grim humor. We might have our issues, but we don't abandon our own. Richard forgot that. He's about to remember. Speaking of Richard, Rivera continued, he's been processed and is being held without bail given the kidnapping conspiracy. Linda and Madison are in separate facilities. They've all requested lawyers, but given the evidence, they're done, Sarah finished. Completely done. The only question now is how many decades they'll serve. Decades. I was still wrapping my mind around the severity. The federal charges alone carry 20 to life. Add in state charges, financial crimes, the attempted murder evidence. Sarah shrugged. They'll be lucky to ever see freedom again. Oh, good, said a chorus of cousins, the vehemence startling me. You don't understand, Emma explained, seeing my expression. We've watched them hurt you for years. Watched you pour love into a black hole of greed and manipulation. Do you know how hard it's been seeing your social media posts about helping your wonderful family while knowing they were destroying you? Social media. Whoa, so blessed to help Dad through his surgery, one cousin quoted. Family is everything. Posted while they were stealing your identity and planning your death. We wanted to comment to warn you, another added, but Patricia held us back, said it had to come from you, the realization. But God, it was hard to watch. Like watching someone drown in slow motion, Julie agreed, knowing they'd fight you if you tried to throw them a life preserver. But you did watch, I said, understanding. All of you. You kept watching, kept caring even when I didn't know you existed. Because that's what real family does, Meredith said firmly. We might not be perfect, might not see each other for years. But when the wolves circle, we show up. With documentation, Emma added, making everyone laugh despite the circumstances. And lawyers, Sarah chimed in. And righteous anger, Frank finished. Lots and lots of righteous anger. I looked around the room at these strangers who weren't strangers. This family that had been stolen from me before I even knew to miss them. For the first time since Derek's death, I felt something I'd thought was gone forever belonging. So what happens now? I asked. Now, Patricia said, putting her arm around me, we start rebuilding. Not just your finances, not just your legal status, your life, your connections, your family, the way it always should have been. Starting with breakfast, someone called out, can't fight evil on an empty stomach. And stories, Emma added. So many stories to share, good ones this time. As the group mobilized, some heading to the kitchen, others pulling out photo albums and phones full of pictures, I stood in the center of it all, overwhelmed by the reversal of fortune. 12 hours ago, I'd had a family that was trying to kill me. Now I had a family ready to kill for me. The difference was everything. 6 hours into the family reunion at the safe house, Agent Rivera received a call that changed everything. Madison had somehow convinced her court-appointed attorney to arrange a meeting. She claimed to have the information about other victims, bigger crimes networks that extended beyond our family. She would only talk to me. Absolutely not, Sarah said immediately. This is a manipulation tactic. She's desperate and dangerous. I agree, Patricia added. You've seen what she's capable of. The insulin syringe alone. She'll be shackled, Rivera explained, behind reinforced glass, 2 guards present at all times, and we'll have a full tactical team on standby. If she so much as breathes wrong, it's over. Why would I want to see her? I asked, though part of me already knew. Despite everything, she was still my sister, the girl who'd crawled into my bed during thunderstorms, who'd held my hand at Derek's funeral even if she'd left early. History, even poisoned history, had weight. Because you need closure, Emma said quietly. I've studied enough cases to know. Without it, you'll always wonder what she might have said. What final manipulation she had planned. Better to face it now with support than have it haunt you later. "I'll go with you," Sarah announced. "And me," Frank added. "We'll all go," Patricia decided. "She wants an audience. Let's give her one. Let her see what real family looks like." Which was how 3 hours later, I found myself in a federal holding facility surrounded by cousins I'd just met, but who already felt more like family than Madison ever had. The visiting room was sterile and cold, all concrete and reinforced glass. Madison sat on the other side an orange jumpsuit, replacing her designer dress hands and feet shackled to a metal table. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Without her makeup and carefully styled hair, she seemed younger, more vulnerable. For a moment, I saw the little girl who'd begged me to check for monsters under her bed. Then she looked up, and her eyes were as cold and calculating as ever. "Hello, Lizzie," she said through the intercom, her voice artificially sweet. "Thanks for coming. I was worried you wouldn't." "Oh, say what you need to say, Madison. You have 10 minutes. So cold. Is that any way to greet your only sister?" "You're not my sister," I said calmly. "Sisters don't try to murder each other for insurance money." Her facade cracked slightly. "That's not... I wasn't really going to... The syringe was just in case, if things went badly." "Things did go badly, for you." I leaned forward. "What do you want, Madison?" She glanced at the guards, then at the assembled family members behind me. "Quite the entourage. Are these the cousins Mom always said were trash?" "These are the family members Mom stole from. The ones Dad threatened. The ones you helped isolate me from." I gestured to Emma. "This is Emma Chen. She's been documenting your crimes for years. Would you like to know what she found?" Madison's eyes darted to Emma, who smiled pleasantly and waved. The gesture seemed to unnerve Madison more than any threat could have. "I need your help," Madison said, finally the words seemingly dragged from her throat. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The sound echoed off the concrete walls, harsh and unforgiving. "You need my help after everything. After the theft, the fraud, the planned kidnapping, the attempted murder. You need my help." "I have information," she said quickly, "about other people Dad was working with. The kidnapping plot, it's bigger than just me and him. There are others, dangerous others, and they're angry that the plan failed." Agent Rivera stepped forward, interested despite herself. "What others?" "I need immunity first, and protection, and..." "You need to stop negotiating," I interrupted. "You have no leverage. You're facing life in prison. The only question is whether you die there at 60 or 90. Madison's composure finally shattered completely. "You self-righteous bitch. You always thought you were better than us. Perfect Elisabeth with her perfect husband and her perfect grief." "My husband is dead," I said evenly. "There's nothing perfect about that." "At least you had one. At least someone loved you enough to marry you." The words exploded from her like shrapnel. "Do you know what it's like being compared to you every single day? Elisabeth would never do that. Elisabeth got better grades. Elisabeth doesn't need rehab. Elisabeth, Elisabeth, Elisabeth. So you decided to become me, steal my identity, my money, my life. I decided to beat you, to prove I could have everything you had, but better." She was crying now, ugly tears that streaked her face. "But even when I had, Bradley had the ring, had the wedding, it wasn't enough. Because you still existed. You were still there being so fucking noble and generous and good." "I wasn't good," I said quietly. "I was enabling. There's a difference." "You were perfect," she spat. "Even your flaws were perfect. The grieving widow so beautiful in her sadness. Do you know how many men wanted to save you? How many asked about you at social events? Madison's tragic sister, too pure for this world." "Is that what this is about, jealousy?" "It's about fairness." She slammed her shackled hands on the table. "Why did you get Derek? Why did you get the house? Why did you get Grandma's trust fund? Why did you get everyone's sympathy and support while I got nothing?" "You got everything. I said, genuinely bewildered. Mom and Dad gave you everything they could steal from others. You never wanted for anything. I wanted to be loved. The scream echoed off the walls. I wanted someone to look at me the way Derek looked at you, the way these cousins are looking at you right now, like you matter, like you're worth protecting, like you're real. The room fell silent. Even the guards seemed affected by the raw pain in her voice. But instead of trying to be worthy of love, Emma said softly, you tried to steal it. Love isn't a zero-sum game. Someone else being loved doesn't diminish your chances. Madison laughed bitterly. Easy for you to say. You didn't grow up in Elizabeth's shadow. You didn't have parents who only saw you as the spare, the backup, the second best. Neither did you, Patricia interjected. Your parents didn't see Elizabeth as best. They saw her as useful. There's a difference. They didn't love either of you. They loved what you could provide. At least she could provide something. So could you, I said. You're brilliant, Madison. The schemes you pulled off required intelligence, planning, charisma. If you'd used those skills legitimately. I tried. She was sobbing now. I tried to be legitimate. Got a job at that nonprofit, remember. But they expected me to start at the bottom, to work my way up, to earn respect. Why should I earn what you were given? I wasn't given anything. I earned. Derek, she screamed. You were given Derek perfect, noble, handsome Derek who adored you from the moment you met. Do you know what I would have done for someone to look at me that way? Just once. Bradley looked at you that way. Bradley looked at who I pretended to be. The second he knew the real me, he ran. She wiped her nose on her jumpsuit sleeve, all pretense of elegance gone. Just like everyone does. Even Mom and Dad. Do you think they love me? They love what I can steal for them, what I can scheme. The moment I stop being useful, they'll abandon me too. They already have, Agent Rivera said gently. Both your parents have agreed to testify against you in exchange for reduced sentences. Madison froze. What? Your mother is claiming you masterminded everything. Your father says the kidnapping was your idea, that you manipulated him. Rivera pulled out a transcript. Would you like to hear their exact words? No, Madison whispered, then louder. No, they can't. We're family. You're co-conspirators, Frank said bluntly. And when co-conspirators get caught, they turn on each other. It's what criminals do. I'm not a criminal, She looked at me desperately. Tell them, Lizzie. Tell them I'm not really bad. Remember when we were kids? Remember the tea parties and the dress-up games? Remember when I gave you my favorite doll because yours broke? I did remember. Madison, age 4, solemnly handing over her beloved Princess Sparkle because I was crying over my broken toy. It had been the last purely kind thing she'd ever done for me. I remember, I said softly. I also remember when you sold that doll 2 weeks later and told Mom I'd lost it. I needed the money for candy. You were 4, Madison. Already lying, already scheming. What happened to you? You happened. The venom was back. Perfect sister who made me look broken by comparison. I didn't make you look anything. You chose. I didn't choose to be born second. I didn't choose to be compared to you every day. I didn't choose to be the disappointing daughter. No, I agreed. But you chose to steal. You chose to lie. You chose to commit fraud. You chose to plan my murder. Those were choices, Madison. Your choices. I was desperate. You were greedy. I was unloved. You were unable to love. I loved you. The words hung in the air like a confession. I hated you and I loved you, and I wanted to be you and destroy you all at the same time. Do you know how exhausting that is? How crazy it makes you. Then why try to kill me? Because if you were gone, maybe I could stop feeling like this. Maybe I could stop comparing myself to your ghost. She laughed hysterically. But you know what the funny part is? Even if you died, I'd still have lost. Because then I'd be competing with Saint Elizabeth, the martyred sister. You'd have been even more perfect dead than alive. This thinking is exactly why you need psychiatric help, Rivera said, which you'll receive in federal prison. I don't need help. I need my sister. Madison looked at me pleadingly. Please, Lizzie, tell them you forgive me. Tell them it was all a misunderstanding. Tell them what? That the insulin wasn't really meant to kill me. That the identity theft was just borrowing. That the charity fraud was an investment in our future. I stood up. I can't save you, Madison. I spent 23 years trying, and all it did was enable your worst impulses. You're really gonna let me rot in prison? I'm going to let you face the consequences of your choices for the first time in your life. I'll die in there. I'm not built for prison. I'm delicate. You're a survivor, I corrected. You always have been. You'll adapt like you always do. Maybe without the ability to lie and steal, you'll finally have to develop a real personality. This is your fault. She was spiraling now, all masks stripped away. If you'd just given us the house, none of this would have happened. If I'd given you the house, I'd be dead, I said simply. The house was never going to be enough. Nothing was ever going to be enough. Because what you really wanted, love, acceptance, worth, can't be stolen. It has to be earned. Earned. She spat the word like profanity, always back to earning. Why should I have to earn what you were given? Because that's how life works. That's how relationships work. That's how everything works. I moved toward the door. Goodbye, Madison. I hope someday you figure that out. Wait. She stood as much as her shackles allowed. What about the information about the other criminals? Don't you want to know who else was involved? Tell Agent Rivera, or don't. It's not my concern anymore. You can't just walk away. I'm your sister. No, I said, hand on the door. You're someone who happened to share my parents. That's biology, not relationship. Relationships require trust, respect, and love. You're incapable of all three. I can change. I can be better. Please, Lizzie, don't leave me here. Don't let me become like them. I paused at the door, looking back one last time. You already are like them, Madison. You became them the moment you chose greed over love. The only difference is you got caught sooner. I hate you. I know. You've hated me since the day you realized you couldn't be me. But here's the thing, I don't hate you. I pity you. You had every opportunity to be loved, to be valued, to be real. You threw it all away for money and lies. Easy for you to say you have them now. She gestured wildly at my cousins. Your precious new family. You replaced us in less than a day. I didn't replace you. I found the family that was always there waiting. The family Mom and Dad hid from me. The family that actually knows how to love. They'll betray you too. Everyone betrays everyone. That's how the world works. No, Emma said quietly. That's how your world worked. The rest of us live differently. Oh, fuck you, Madison screamed. Fuck all of you. You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through. We know enough, Frank said firmly. We know you're a thief, a liar, and an attempted murderer. That's all we need to know. As we filed out, Madison's screams followed us down the concrete corridor. Profanity threats, pleas, and finally broken sobs. The sound of someone realizing that their last manipulation had failed, their last card had been played. In the parking lot, Patricia put her arm around me. Are you okay? I think so, I said, surprised to find it was true. I thought I'd feel guilty or sad, but I just feel empty. Empty is good, Emma said. Empty means you can fill yourself with better things, better people, better memories. She was right about one thing, I mused. I did replace them quickly. No, Sarah corrected firmly. You revealed them. There's a difference. Your real family was always there, hidden beneath their lies. Like a painting covered in grime, you didn't create something new, you just cleaned off the dirt. Besides, one of the Marine cousins said via video chat, 23 years isn't quickly, it's overdue. As we drove back to the safe house, I thought about Madison's final words. About hate and love twisted together, about the exhausting weight of comparison and competition. She'd been right about one thing, it must have been hell living in my shadow. But she'd been wrong about the most important part. It hadn't been my shadow that destroyed her. It had been her own choices, her own greed, her own inability to see that love multiplied when shared rather than divided. Madison would spend the next decades in prison, probably running small cons on other inmates, always scheming, always grasping for something just out of reach. She'd never understand that what she'd wanted most, to be seen, to be valued, to be loved, had always been available. She just had to stop stealing long enough to receive it. But that was Madison's tragedy, not mine. I had cousins to meet, stories to hear, a life to rebuild. The responsible daughter was dead, and Elisabeth Mitchell was finally truly free. The federal courthouse in Hartford buzzed with activity as the Mitchell family cases moved with unprecedented speed through the system. 3 days after the engagement party, I sat in a secured witness room surrounded by my legal team and newfound family as we watched the machinery of justice finally grind into motion. "This is remarkable," Agent Rivera said, reviewing the latest updates on her tablet. "I've never seen federal prosecutors move this quickly. Your family managed to unite every law enforcement agency in Connecticut against them." "It helps that they committed crimes in multiple jurisdictions," Sarah added, organizing her files. FBI, IRS, DEA for Madison's drug connections, Secret Service for the financial fraud, even Homeland Security, given the international money laundering aspects. Homeland Security. I was still learning the full scope of their crimes. Madison's charity was accepting donations from foreign nationals, then moving money offshore. That triggered terrorism financing protocols. Sarah pulled up a document. She might have been the least competent money launderer in history, but she was certainly the most ambitious. The door opened and Thomas Fitzgerald entered, looking satisfied. Richard just pled guilty to all charges. His lawyer convinced him that trial would only make things worse. "How much worse could it get?" Patricia asked. "Media attention worse. Court TV wants to broadcast the trial. Netflix is already developing a documentary. Publishers are offering book deals to anyone with inside knowledge." He looked at me. "You've had 17 offers just this morning." "I don't want to profit from this," I said firmly. "You don't have to, but you should control the narrative. Otherwise, they'll make Madison the misunderstood villain, and you the cold sister who destroyed her family." Emma snorted. "Only in America could attempted murder be spun as a sympathetic origin story." A knock interrupted us. A young prosecutor entered, looking harried. "Ms. Mitchell, we need you in courtroom 3. Your mother is about to be sentenced and the judge wants victim impact statements." Victim impact statements. The chance to tell Mom exactly what her betrayal had cost. Part of me wanted to skip it to let the past die with their convictions, but my cousins had other ideas. "You need to do this," Frank said firmly. "Not for her, but for you. Say what needs to be said. Let the court hear the human cost of their greed." Which was how I found myself standing in a federal courtroom facing the woman who'd given birth to me and then spent 34 years stealing from me. Mom sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, her perfect hair now gray at the roots, her face bare of makeup. She looked older, smaller, diminished without her props and costumes. "Ms. Mitchell," Judge Harrison said kindly, "whenever you're ready." I unfolded the paper where I'd written my thoughts, then set it aside. What I needed to say couldn't be scripted. "Your Honor, Linda Mitchell is my biological mother. She fed me, clothed me, kept me alive for 18 years. For that, I'm grateful, but that's where my gratitude ends." I looked directly at Mom. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Linda Mitchell stole my inheritance. She stole my identity. She stole my mail, my relationships, my trust funds. But worse than the financial theft was the emotional devastation. She convinced me I was only valuable as a source of money. That love was transactional, that family meant enabling dysfunction. My voice grew stronger as I continued. She isolated me from extended family who could have provided real love and support. She used my grief over my husband's death as an opportunity for further exploitation. She participated in a plan to have me kidnapped or killed for insurance money. She looked at her own daughter and saw only dollar signs. That's not true, Mom burst out. I loved you. In my own way, I loved you. Judge Harrison banged his gavel. The defendant will remain silent. Your way of loving nearly killed me, I continued. Your way of loving left me alone, traumatized and financially devastated while you wore stolen jewelry and lived in my house. Your way of loving is indistinguishable from hatred. Your Honor, Mom's lawyer protested, this is unnecessarily harsh. This is necessarily honest, I corrected. Linda Mitchell needs to understand that her actions have consequences, that her victims are real people with real pain, that her daughters deserved better than to be seen as ATMs with pulses. I pulled out a photo of Derek. This is my late husband. He died serving our country. His death benefits were meant to secure my future. Linda Mitchell saw them as her retirement fund. She's been planning to steal or inherit that money since the day he died. That's who she is. That's who she's always been. I was desperate, Mom cried out, ignoring her lawyer's attempts to silence her. Do you know what it's like to age without money, to see your beauty fade and have nothing to replace it? I needed security. You had security. You had a daughter who would have cared for you in old age, who would have ensured you never wanted for anything. All you had to do was love me. Actually, love me, not pretend to while stealing from me. Love doesn't pay bills. No, but it does build relationships where people want to help each other, where family supports family out of genuine care, not manipulation. I gestured to my cousins in the gallery. I've known them for 3 days, and they've shown me more authentic love than you managed in 34 years. Judge Harrison had heard enough. Ms. Mitchell, thank you for your statement. It's clear the emotional damage runs deep, and the court will consider this in sentencing. As I returned to my seat, the judge began his ruling. The charges were read: wire fraud mail, fraud identity theft, money laundering conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Each one carried years of potential prison time. The Linda Mitchell. Judge Harrison's voice was grave. You have pled guilty to 37 federal charges. The scope and duration of your criminal enterprise is staggering. But what truly shocks this court is that your primary victim was your own daughter. Mom stood trembling slightly. You took a child who loved you unconditionally and systematically destroyed her life for profit. You stole not just money, but relationships, opportunities, and peace of mind. You participated in a conspiracy that could have resulted in her death. These are the actions of someone devoid of normal human empathy. I'm not a monster, Mom protested. I'm just a woman who made mistakes. Mistakes are accidental. Your crimes required planning, documentation, forgery, and sustained deception over decades. These were choices, Mrs. Mitchell. Evil choices. The judge consulted his notes. This court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison, followed by 10 years of supervised release. You are ordered to pay full restitution to all victims with Elisabeth Mitchell as primary beneficiary. 25 years. Mom's legs gave out. Her lawyer had to support her. I'll die in there. You should have considered that before committing federal crimes. Judge Harrison was unmoved. Court is adjourned. As they led Mom away, she managed to turn back one last time. Elisabeth, please tell them I'm not evil. Tell them about the good times. Tell them... But I had nothing to say. The good times, if they'd ever existed, were tainted by the knowledge of what came after. Every birthday party had been funded by theft. Every Christmas gift came wrapped in lies. There was nothing to salvage from the wreckage of our relationship. The afternoon brought Madison's sentencing. She'd tried to withdraw her guilty plea, claiming incompetent counsel, but the judge denied it. She sat at the defense table like a caged animal, all her beauty stripped away by fear and rage. Her sentencing was worse than Mom's. The charity fraud alone carried 20 years. Add in the attempted murder, identity theft, and money laundering, and Madison was looking at life without parole. Your sister has already given her impact statement, Judge Harrison noted, but I want to address something specific to your case, Ms. Mitchell. Madison straightened slightly, perhaps hoping for mercy. You had every advantage: intelligence, beauty, charm. You could have succeeded legitimately in any field. Instead, you chose to become a predator. You targeted charitable donors, elderly victims, even your own family. You showed no remorse until caught, and even now, your only regret seems to be failure rather than harm caused. I'm sick, Madison burst out. I have mental illness. I need treatment, not prison. You had access to treatment. Your sister paid for multiple rehab stays. You used them as networking opportunities for new victims. The judge's voice was ice. Mental illness doesn't excuse premeditated attempted murder. It wasn't premeditated. The insulin was just what AI, happy accident. You researched lethal doses. You practiced injection techniques. You carried the syringe to a public event. That's textbook premeditation. Madison turned to me desperately. Lizzie, tell them about my mental health. Tell them I'm not responsible. I stood slowly. Madison is mentally ill. She's also a narcissist who weaponized her illness to avoid accountability. She knew right from wrong. She just didn't care. I cared. I loved you. You loved the idea of being me. There's a difference. Judge Harrison rendered his verdict life in prison with the possibility of parole after 35 years. Madison would be 70 before she had a chance at freedom. The screaming that followed was inhuman. Madison had to be physically dragged from the courtroom, her designer image finally and completely shattered. The last words I heard were threats and profanity, the mask fully off, the real Madison, finally visible to all. Dad's sentencing came last. He'd cut a deal to testify against his co-conspirators in the kidnapping plot, reducing his potential sentence. But even with cooperation, the judge showed little mercy. Richard Mitchell, you sold your daughter's safety for money. You gambled with her life as surely as you gambled with cards and horses. A father's duty is to protect. You became the primary threat. Dad stood silently, perhaps, finally understanding the magnitude of his choices. 15 years, federal prison, 10 years supervised release, lifetime ban from any fiduciary position, full restitution to victims. It was less than the others, but still substantial. Dad would be in his 80s when released if he lived that long. As they led him away, Dad looked at me once. No words, no pleas, just a long look that might have been regret or might have been calculation. With Dad, I'd never know. It's over, Sarah said as we left the courthouse. All three convicted, all three going away for a significant time. You're safe. But it wasn't quite over. That evening, we learned the full scope of the investigation. 17 other people had been arrested in connection with various schemes. Dad's gambling associates, Madison's money laundering network, Mom's identity theft ring. The Mitchell family had been a criminal hub connecting various illegal enterprises across the Northeast. You brought down an entire criminal network, Agent Rivera told me over coffee, simply by saying no at that party. Do you understand how remarkable that is? I just wanted them to stop asking for money, I said honestly. Most victims never get that far. They stay trapped in the cycle forever. You broke free and took dozens of criminals down with you. The news coverage was intense. Every major outlet wanted interviews. The story of the Society family exposed as criminals was irresistible to media, but I refused all requests. This wasn't entertainment. It was my life, my pain, my survival. Instead, I focused on recovery. The government seized all assets purchased with stolen funds. The Vermont house, the cars, the jewelry, even the furniture from my home that they'd bought with my money. Everything was liquidated for victim restitution. Current estimate is $4.2 million in recovered assets. Thomas Fitzgerald reported. Combined with the insurance settlement and damage awards, you'll receive approximately $7 million. $7 million. It seemed like an impossible number, but Sarah broke it down what I'd given them, what they'd stolen interest penalties, pain and suffering. It added up. Derek wanted you secure, she reminded me. This does that. You can live comfortably, help others build the flight school, whatever you want. What I wanted was simpler than that. I wanted to know my cousins, to build real relationships, to learn what family actually meant when it wasn't poisoned by greed and manipulation. We're having Sunday dinner next week, Patricia announced. All 23 cousins if the military ones can get leave. You're hosting. I don't know how to host family dinner, I admitted. You'll learn, Emma said simply. We'll teach you. Real family, real relationships, real love. It's not complicated when people actually care. As I looked around at these people who dropped everything to support a cousin they'd never met, I began to believe her. The responsible daughter had enabled criminals. Elisabeth Mitchell would learn to accept genuine love. The authorities had acted. Justice had been served. Now came the harder part, learning to live without the toxic patterns that had defined my entire life. Learning to be free. But I wouldn't be learning alone. 23 cousins, several aunts and uncles and friends like Sarah would make sure of that. The family I'd been denied was determined to make up for lost time. And in my house, really mine now, finally completely, Derek's picture smiled from the mantel. He'd wanted me safe and loved. It had taken 3 years and a catastrophic party. But his wish was finally coming true. 3 months later, I stood in the doorway of what had once been my prison and was now my sanctuary. The house Derek bought had been professionally cleaned, every trace of my family's occupation erased. But more than that, it had been transformed. Where Mom's gaudy decorations had cluttered the walls, now hung photos of my real family cousins at various ages. Aunts and uncles I was getting to know, pictures from Sunday dinners that had become my favorite tradition. The contractor finished the renovation yesterday, Sarah said, joining me in the entrance. The basement is completely redone. No trace of your father's illegal poker games. I walked through rooms that felt both familiar and new. The dining room, where we now hosted weekly family gatherings. The kitchen, where Emma taught me her grandmother's recipes. The living room, where my Marine cousins had helped me mount Derek's flag in a place of honor. But the biggest change was upstairs. The nursery Derek had painted soft yellow, the room I'd kept locked for 3 years, was now the Thomas Derek Mitchell Resource Center. Computers lined the walls, reference books filled custom shelves, and comfortable chairs created study nooks. This was where veterans' children came for tutoring, where military widows learned job skills, where a different kind of family was being built. Hello, Mitchell. A young woman peered around the door. The support group is here for the 10 o'clock meeting. I glanced at my watch, surprised at how quickly time passed these days. Thank you, Jennifer. I'll be right there. Jennifer was one of our success stories, a military widow who'd gone from homeless to employed in 2 months with our help. Now, she managed the center's daily operations with military precision. The support group had grown from 5 members to 25. Military widows mostly, but also women who'd survived family financial abuse. We met weekly to share stories, strategies, and strength. Before we start, I announced once everyone had assembled, I have news. The Derek Mitchell Memorial Flight School has been approved for accreditation. We'll accept our first class of students this fall. The room erupted in applause. Derek's dream, delayed but not destroyed, was finally becoming reality. The settlement money, combined with donations from grateful families we'd helped, had made it possible. How many students? Asked Carla, whose husband had served with Derek. 12 in the first class. Full scholarships for veterans and their children. We've already received over 200 applications. Derek would be so proud, someone said softly. He is proud, I corrected gently. I feel him every time we help someone, every time a veteran's child gets tutoring, every time a widow finds her strength. He's here in the work. After the meeting, I found Patricia in the kitchen preparing lunch for the volunteers. She'd become a regular fixture, arriving most mornings with baked goods and staying to help however needed. Mail came, she said, handing me a stack, including something from the federal prison. My stomach clenched. I recognized Madison's handwriting on the envelope. This was the fifth letter she'd sent, each one unopened, each one filed with my lawyer in case they contained threats. You don't have to read it, Patricia said gently. I know. I set it aside with the others. Maybe someday I'd be ready to hear what Madison had to say, but not today. Today was about building, not revisiting destruction. Also, Emma called. She passed the bar exam. First try, I grinned already, knowing the answer. Of course, she's brilliant. Wants to specialize in financial crimes, specifically family-based fraud. Says you inspired her. I survived. That's different from inspiration. No, Patricia said firmly. You survived and then chose to help others survive. That's the definition of inspiration. The doorbell interrupted our conversation. I opened it to find Bradley Wellington III, looking healthier than I'd seen him since the engagement party. The haunted look was gone, replaced by something calmer. Elisabeth, he nodded politely. I hope I'm not intruding. Bradley, come in. I led him to the living room, curious about this unexpected visit. I wanted to thank you, he said without preamble, for exposing Madison before I married her, for saving me from, he gestured vaguely, whatever that would have become. You don't owe me thanks. You were as much a victim as anyone. Perhaps, but I was a willing victim. I saw what I wanted to see, ignored red flags because she was beautiful and made me feel special. He pulled out an envelope, which is why I want to donate this to your foundation. I opened it to find a check for $100,000. Bradley, this is too much. It's what I would have spent on the wedding. Consider it gratitude transformed into purpose. He smiled slightly. My mother sends her regards, by the way. She's been following your work. Says you're doing more for crime victims than most government programs. We're just trying to help people rebuild. Which is what I'm doing too. I'm in therapy, learning about why I was so susceptible to manipulation. Turns out having emotionally distant parents makes you vulnerable to love bombing. He stood to leave. Maybe that's something your support groups could address, those of us who are targets for people like Madison. After he left, I added his suggestion to my ever-growing list of programs to develop. The foundation was expanding faster than I'd imagined, but with my cousin's help, we were managing. Frank handled the finances with an iron fist, making sure every penny was accounted for. Emma was setting up the legal aid division. The military cousins provided security training for abuse survivors. Everyone contributed their skills, creating something beautiful from the ashes of destruction. That evening, as sunset painted the sky purple and gold, I sat on the porch Derek had built with his own hands. The same porch where we'd planned our future, where we dreamed of children playing in the yard, where I'd said goodbye before his final deployment. You did it, I said softly to the evening air. You kept me safe even from beyond. You gave me the strength to say no, to stand up, to survive. And now? I gestured at the house full of light and laughter, volunteer voices drifting through windows. Now I get to pay it forward. My phone buzzed with the group chat my cousins had created. 23 voices sharing daily moments, inside jokes, developing bonds, strengthening. The family Madison had tried to steal from me had become my greatest treasure. Tomorrow's Sunday dinner is at Mike's house. Patricia's message read, he says he's making his famous chili. Fair warning, his definition of mild could strip paint. I'll bring milk, I typed back, smiling at the chorus of laughing emojis that followed. Inside, volunteers were cleaning up from the day's activities. The house hummed with purpose, with life, with meaning. This wasn't the future Derek and I had planned, but it honored his memory in ways that mattered. Elisabeth. Jennifer approached hesitantly. There's someone here asking for help, says she heard about us from the news. Her sister's been stealing from her for years. Send her to my office, I said, standing and brushing off my jeans. Let's see what we can do. Because that's what the responsible daughter had become, not an enabler of dysfunction, but a creator of solutions. Not isolated and alone, but surrounded by chosen family and purpose. Not a victim, but a survivor who helped others survive too. The Derek Mitchell Memorial Foundation, the flight school, the resource center, the support groups, all built on the rubble of a family that had tried to destroy me. All proof that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, it's living well and helping others do the same. As I walked back into my house, really mine, finally mine, I caught sight of Derek's photo on the mantle. Next to it sat new additions, pictures from cousin gatherings, volunteer appreciation events, the first graduating class from our job training program. Past and present merged into something hopeful. Thank you, I whispered to Derek's image, for loving me, for protecting me, for giving me the strength to build this life. Then I went to help another woman find her freedom, knowing that somewhere Derek was smiling. And that's my story. I concluded looking out at the audience of 200. The first annual Derek Mitchell Memorial Foundation Gala had drawn supporters from across Connecticut. A story of betrayal and survival of chosen family and second chances. But most importantly, a story of how saying no can sometimes be the most powerful word in any language. The applause was warm and genuine. In the front row sat my cousins, all 23 who could make it, including my Marine cousins on special leave. Patricia dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, while Emma gave me a subtle thumbs up. Before we close tonight's program, I continued, I want to share something I haven't told anyone yet. The room quieted, expectant. 3 years ago, Derek and I preserved genetic material before his final deployment, just in case, he said, always planning for contingencies. I placed a hand on my still flat stomach. I'm happy to announce that the Derek Mitchell legacy will continue in a very personal way. Baby Mitchell is due in 6 months. The room exploded. My cousins were on their feet cheering and crying. Sarah rushed the stage to hug me, abandoning all professional composure. Even the usually stoic Frank was wiping his eyes. Derek always wanted to be a father, I said when the noise died down. He didn't get that chance in life, but love finds a way. This child will grow up surrounded by the family I found, supported by the community we built, and knowing that their father was a hero who protected their mother even from beyond the grave. Later, as the gala wound down and donors mingled with program recipients, I stood on the balcony overlooking the Connecticut River. The same river I'd once thought about jumping into during my darkest moments after Derek's death. You okay? Emma joined me, her law degree fresh enough that she still carried it in her posture. More than okay. For the first time in my life, I'm actually happy, not pretending, not coping, genuinely happy. She gestured vaguely in the direction of the federal prisons where my biological family resided. They made their choices. I've made mine. I touched my stomach gently. This baby will never know conditional love, never wonder if they're valued for themselves or their resources, never have to buy affection with sacrifice. They'll be lucky to have you as a mom. I'll research the most efficient methods, Emma promised, making me laugh. As guests began departing, each one stopped to share how our programs had helped them. Veterans who'd found new careers, widows who'd discovered their strength, abuse survivors who'd reclaimed their lives. Each story added another layer of meaning to what we'd built. Mrs. Mitchell, a young woman, approached nervously. I'm Sophie Chen. I just wanted to thank you. Your story gave me the courage to report my family's financial abuse. I'm starting over at 50, but I'm free. Freedom's worth any price, I assured her, and you're not starting over alone. That's what we're here for. As the evening ended and the last guest departed, I stood in the ballroom surrounded by my chosen family. The cousins were already planning a baby shower that would, knowing them, be both excessive and perfect. Sarah was drafting lists of pediatricians and educational trusts. Patricia was debating nursery colors. You know what the best part is, I said to the room at large. This baby will have what I never did: a family that loves unconditionally, that celebrates successes without envy, that offers support without manipulation. That's Derek's true legacy. To Derek, Frank raised his glass of sparkling cider. To all of it, I concluded, touching my water glass to theirs. To everything we've built from the ashes of what tried to destroy us. Through the ballroom windows, stars appeared in the clear Connecticut sky. Somewhere among them, I like to think Derek was watching, proud of the woman I'd become and the life we'd created together, even in death. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer at the resource center. 3 new families seeking help tomorrow. We're changing lives, Mrs. M. Yes, we were. 1 person at a time, 1 family at a time, 1 chance at a time. The responsible daughter was gone. In her place stood Elisabeth Mitchell, widow survivor, mother-to-be, and founder of a movement that turned pain into purpose. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life I'd earned. Some might wonder if I ever read Madison's letters from prison. I did eventually, with Sarah present for legal protection. They were exactly what you'd expect: manipulation disguised as apology, blame dressed as explanation, requests for money wrapped in false remorse. I filed them away and continued building my life, because that's what survivors do. We don't forget the pain, but we don't let it define us either. We take our scars and turn them into maps for others to follow toward freedom. The Derek Mitchell Memorial Flight School has graduated 3 classes now. 60 pilots carrying on Derek's legacy in the skies. The foundation has helped over 500 families escape financial abuse. Baby Derek Jr. is 2 years old, surrounded by more love than any child could need, with 23 cousins competing to spoil him. And me, I'm free. Genuinely, completely, beautifully free. It cost me everything I thought I had, but gave me everything I actually needed. Sometimes the most expensive lessons are the most valuable. Sometimes saying no is saying yes to yourself. And sometimes the family you choose becomes stronger than the family you were born into. That's my story. May it help someone else find their freedom, their chosen family. Because everyone deserves what Derek gave me: unconditional love and the strength to accept nothing less. If you found this story meaningful, please like this video to help others discover Elisabeth's inspiring journey. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of transformation and triumph. Thank you for listening, and may you find your own strength to build the life you deserve, surrounded by people who love you for who you are, not what you can provide.